I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. I communicate now. Question 12.1. Questioner, I got a call from Henry Puharich this afternoon and he will be here next month. I would like to ask if it is permissible for him to join in our circle and ask questions. I would also like to ask if Michael D. Obranovic, also known as George Hunt Williamson, could join our circle as well. Answer, I am Ra. These entities, at present, are not properly attuned for the particular work due to vibrational distortions which in turn are due to a recent lack of time-space which you call busyness. It would be requested that the entities spend a brief time-space in each diurnal cycle of your planet in contemplation. At a future time-space in your continuum you are requested to ask again. This group is highly balanced to this instrument's vibratory distortions due to, firstly, contact with the instrument on a day-to-day basis. Secondly, due to contact with the instrument through meditation periods. Thirdly, through a personal mind, body, spirit complex distortion towards contemplation which in sum causes this group to be effective. Question 12.2. Questioner, in the last session you mentioned that the Orion Crusaders came here in chariots. Could you describe the chariots? Answer, I am Ra. The term chariot is a term used in warfare among your peoples. That is its significance. The shape of the Orion craft is one of the following. Firstly, the elongated, ovoid shape which is of a darker nature than silver but which has a metallic appearance if seen in the light. In the absence of light, it appears to be red or fiery in some manner. Other craft include disc-shaped objects of a small nature approximately 12 feet in your measurement in diameter, the box-like shape approximately 40 feet to a side in your measurement. Other craft can take on a desired shape through the use of thought control mechanisms. There are various civilization complexes which work within this group. Some are more able to use intelligent infinity than others. The information is very seldom shared, therefore, the chariots vary greatly in shape and appearance. Question 12.3. Questioner, is there any effort on the part of the Confederation to stop the Orion chariots from arriving here? Answer, I am Ra. Every effort is made to quarantine this planet. However, the network of guardians, much like any other pattern of patrols on whatever level, does not hinder each and every entity from penetrating quarantine. For if request is made in light love, the law of one will be met with acquiescence. If the request is not made, due to the slipping through the net, then there is penetration of this net. Question 12.4. Questioner, who makes this request? Answer, I am Ra. Your query is unclear. Please restate. Question 12.5. Questioner, I don't understand how the Confederation stops the Orion chariots from coming through the quarantine. Answer, I am Ra. There is contact at the level of light form or light body being depending upon the vibratory level of the Guardian. These Guardians sweep reaches of your Earth's energy fields to be aware of any entities approaching. An entity which is approaching is hailed in the name of the One Creator. Any entity thus hailed is bathed in love light and will of free will obey the quarantine due to the power of the law of one. Question 12.6. Questioner, what would happen to the entity if he did not obey the quarantine after being hailed? Answer, I am Ra. To not obey quarantine after being hailed on the level of which we speak would be equivalent to your not stopping upon walking into a solid brick wall. Question 12.7. Questioner, what would happen to the entity if he did this? What would happen to his chariot? Answer, I am Ra. The Creator is one being. The vibratory level of those able to breach the quarantine boundaries is such that upon seeing the love light net it is impossible to break this law. Therefore, nothing happens. No attempt is made. There is no confrontation. The only beings who are able to penetrate the quarantine are those who discover windows or distortions in the space-time continue surrounding your planet's energy fields. Through these windows they come. These windows are rare and unpredictable. Question 12.8. Questioner, does this account for what we call UFO flaps, where a large number of UFOs show up like in 1973? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 12.9. Questioner, are most of the UFOs which are seen in our skies from the Orion Group? Answer: I am Ra. Many of those seen in your skies are of the Orion Group. They send out messages. Some are received by those who are oriented towards service to others. These messages then are altered to be acceptable to those entities while warning of difficulties ahead. This is the most that self-serving entities can do when faced with those whose wish is to serve others. The contacts which the group finds most helpful to their cause are those contacts made with entities whose orientation is towards service to self. There are many thought form entities in your skies which are of a positive nature and are the projections of the Confederation. Other sightings are due to the inadvertent visualization by your people's optical mechanisms of your own government's weaponry. Question 12.10. Questioner: which group was it that contacted Henry Puharich in Israel around 1972? Answer: I am Ra. We must refrain from answering this query due to the probability that the one you call Henry will read this answer. This would cause distortions in his future. It is necessary that each being use free and complete discernment from within the All-Self which is at the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. Question 12.11. Questioner: would that also keep you from answering who it was that the group I was in 1962, contacted then? Answer: I am Ra. This query may be answered. The group contacted was the Confederation. Question 12.12. Questioner: did they have any of their craft in our area at that time? Answer: I am Ra. There was no craft. There was a thought form. Question 12.13. Questioner: you mentioned that the Orion Crusaders, when they get through the net, give both technical and non-technical information. I think I know what you mean by technical information, but what type of non-technical information do they give? And am I right in assuming that this is done by telepathic contact? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Through telepathy the philosophy of the law of one with the distortion of service to self is promulgated. In advanced groups there are rituals and exercises given, and these have been written down just as the service to others oriented entities have written down the promulgated philosophy of their teachers. The philosophy concerns the service of manipulating others that they may experience service towards the other self, thus through this experience becoming able to appreciate service to self. These entities will become oriented towards service to self and in turn manipulate yet others so that they in turn might experience the service towards the other self. Question 12.14. Questioner: would this be the origin of what we call black magic? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct in one sense, incorrect in another. The Orion Group has aided the so-called negatively oriented among your mind, body, spirit complexes. These same entities will be concerning themselves with service to self in any case, and there are many upon your so-called inner planes which are negatively oriented and thus available as inner teachers or guides and so-called possessors of certain souls who seek this distortion of service to self. Question 12.15. Questioner: is it possible for an entity here on Earth to be so confused as to call both the Confederation and the Orion Group in an alternating way, first one, then the other, and then back to the first again? Answer: I am Ra. It is entirely possible for the untuned channel, as you call that service, to receive both positive and negative communications. If the entity at the base of its confusion is oriented towards service to others, the entity will begin to receive messages of doom. If the entity at the base of the complex of beingness is oriented towards service to self, the Crusaders, who in this case do not find it necessary to lie, will simply begin to give the philosophy they are here to give. Many of your so-called contacts among your people have been confused and self-destructive because the channels were oriented towards service to others, but, in the desire for proof, were open to the lying information of the Crusaders, who then were able to neutralize the effectiveness of the channel. Question 12.16. Questioner: are most of these Crusaders fourth density? Answer: I am Ra. There is a majority of fourth density. That is correct. Question 12.17. Questioner: is an entity in the fourth density normally invisible to us? Answer: I am Ra. The use of the word normal is one which befuddles the meaning of the question. Let us rephrase for clarity. The fourth density is, by choice, not visible to third density. It is possible for fourth density to be visible. However, it is not the choice of the fourth density entity to be visible due to the necessity for concentration upon a rather difficult vibrational complex which is the third density you experience. Question 12.18. Questioner: are there any Confederation or Orion entities living upon the Earth and operating visibly among us in our society at this time? Answer: I am Ra. There are no entities of either group walking among you at this time. However, the Crusaders of Orion use two types of entities to do their bidding, shall we say. The first type is the thought form, the second, a kind of robot. Question 12.19. Questioner: could you describe the robot? Answer: I am Ra. The robot may look like any other being. It is a construct. Question 12.20. Questioner: is the robot what is normally called the Men in Black? Answer: I am Ra. This is incorrect. Question 12.21. Questioner: who are the Men in Black? Answer: I am Ra. The Men in Black are a thought form type of entity which have some beingness to their makeup. They have certain physical characteristics given them. However, their true vibrational nature is without third density vibrational characteristics and, therefore, they are able to materialize and dematerialize when necessary. Question 12.22. Questioner: are all of these Men in Black then used by the Orion Crusaders? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 12.23. Questioner: if a man in black were to visit me and I locked him in the closet, could I keep him, or would he disappear? Answer: I am Ra. It depends upon which type of entity you grab. You are perhaps able to perceive a construct. The construct might be kept for a brief period, although these constructs also have an ability to disappear. The programming of these constructs, however, makes it more difficult to remotely control them. You will not be able to grapple with a thought form entity of the Man in Black, as you call it, type. Question 12.24. Questioner: would this be against the law of one? Would I be making a mistake by grabbing one of those entities? Answer: I am Ra. There are no mistakes under the law of one. Question 12.25. Questioner: what I mean to ask is, would I be polarizing more towards self-service or service to others when I did this act of locking up the thought form or construct? Answer: I am Ra. You may consider that question for yourself. We interpret the law of one, but not to the extent of advice. Question 12.26. Questioner: you spoke of wanderers. Who are wanderers? Where do they come from? Answer: I am Ra. Imagine, if you will, the sands of your shores. As countless as the grains of sand are the sources of intelligent infinity. When a social memory complex has achieved its complete understanding of its desire, it may conclude that its desire is service to others with the distortion towards reaching their hand, figuratively, to any entities who call for aid. These entities, whom you may call the brothers and sisters of sorrow, move toward this calling of sorrow. These entities are from all reaches of the infinite creation and are bound together by the desire to serve in this distortion. Question 12.27. Questioner: how many of them are incarnate on Earth now? Answer: I am Ra. The number is approximate due to a heavy influx of those birthed at this time due to an intensive need to lighten the planetary vibration and thus aid in harvest. The number approaches 65 million. Question 12.28. Questioner: are most of these from the fourth density? Or what density do they come from? Answer: I am Ra. Few there are of fourth density. The largest number of wanderers, as you call them, are of the sixth density. The desire to serve must be distorted towards a great deal of purity of mind and what you may call foolhardiness or bravery, depending upon your distortion complex judgment. The challenge danger of the wanderer is that it will forget its mission, become karmically involved, and thus be swept into the maelstrom of which it had incarnated to avert the destruction. Question 12.29. Questioner: what could one of these entities do to become karmically involved? Could you give an example of that? Answer: I am Ra. An entity which acts in a consciously unloving manner in action with other beings can become karmically involved. Question 12.30. Questioner: do many of these wanderers have physical ailments in this third density situation? Answer: I am Ra. Due to the extreme variance between the vibratory distortions of third density and those of the more dense densities, if you will, wanderers have as a general rule some form of handicap, difficulty, or feeling of alienation which is severe. The most common of these difficulties are alienation, the reaction against the planetary vibration by personality disorders, as you would call them, and body complex ailments indicating difficulty in adjustment to the planetary vibration, such as allergies, as you would call them. Question 12.31. Questioner: is there a way for these wanderers to heal themselves of their physical ailments? Answer: I am Ra. This will be the last complete question of this time-space. The self-healing distortion is effected through realization of the intelligent infinity resting within. This is blocked in some way of these who are not perfectly balanced in bodily complexes. The blockage varies from entity to entity. It requires the conscious awareness of the spiritual nature of reality, if you will, and the corresponding pourings of this reality into the individual mind, body, spirit complex for healing to take place. We will use this instrument as example. The portions of its ailment, as you call this distortion complex, that can be perfected in balance are due primarily to a blockage of the indigo ray or pineal energy center. This center receives the intelligent energy from all sources lawful within the one creation, that is, lawful in this third density distortion or illusion. If there is no blockage, these energies pour or stream down into the mind, body, spirit complex, perfecting moment by moment the individual's body complex. This instrument also experiences some distortion of the green ray energy center, which you may call the heart center. It is overly open due to an intensive desire distortion on the part of this mind, body, spirit complex towards service to others, or as you may call it, universal love. This entity, therefore, spends itself without regard to its reserves of mind, body, spirit complex distortion in regard to what you call strength or energy. This distortion is primarily due to the blockage of the indigo ray. As we have said before, the misapprehension distortion of the instrument responsible for this blockage is the basic orientation towards a belief in unworthiness. The unworthiness distortion blocks the free flow of intelligent energy. The seventh or violet ray is unimpaired, this being not only an energy receptor but a sum total of the vibratory level of the individual. The other energy centers are also quite clear. The solution to healing in this case is action that puts into practice the peaceful understanding in humility distortion that the entity is one with the Creator, therefore perfected and not separate. In each case of what you would call ill health, one or more of these energy centers is blocked. The intelligence of the mind, body, spirit complex needs then to be alerted either by the self as healer or by the catalyst of another healer, as we have said before. Is there a short question before we close this session? Question 12.32. Questioner: is it possible for you to tell us if any of the three of us are wanderers? Answer: I am Ra. In scanning each of the mind, body, spirit complexes present, we find an already complete sureness of this occurrence and, therefore, find no harm in recapitulating this occurrence. Each of those present are wanderers pursuing a mission, if you will. Question 12.33. Questioner: thank you. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable? Answer: I am Ra. We ask you to realign the object upon which the symbols sit. It is not a significant distortion for only one session, but you will find upon measuring the entire assemblage that the resting place is 1.4 degrees from the correct alignment, the resting place an additional 0.5 degrees away from proper orientation. Do not concern yourself with this in the space-time nexus present, but do not allow these distortions to remain over a long period or the contact will be gradually impaired. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. I communicate now. Question 13.1. Questioner, first of all I would like to apologize for asking so many stupid questions while searching for what we should do. I consider what we are doing to be a great honor and privilege to also be humble messengers of the law of one. I now believe that the way to prepare this book is to start at the beginning of creation and follow through the evolution of man on earth, investigating at all times how the law of one was used. I would also like to make as the title of the book, The Law of One, and I would like to state as the author, Ra. Would you agree to this? Answer, I am Ra. Your query is unclear. Would you please state as separate queries each area of agreement? Question 13.2. Questioner, first, I would like to start at the beginning of creation, as far back as we can go and follow the development of man to the present time. Is this agreeable? Answer, I am Ra. This is completely your discernment understanding decision. Question 13.3. Questioner, secondly, I would like to title the book, The Law of One, by Ra. Is this agreeable? Answer, I am Ra. The title of the book is acceptable. The authorship by Vibratory Sound Complex Ra is, in our distortion of understanding, incomplete. We are messengers. Question 13.4. Questioner, can you state who then should author the book? Answer, I am Ra. I can only request that if your discernment understanding suggests the use of this vibratory sound complex, Ra, the phrase, and humble messenger of the law of one, be appended. Question 13.5. Questioner, thank you. Can you tell me of the first known thing in the creation? Answer, I am Ra. The first known thing in the creation is infinity. The infinity is creation. Question 13.6. Questioner, from this infinity then must come what we experience as creation. What was the next step or the next evolvement? Answer, I am Ra. Infinity became aware. This was the next step. Question 13.7. Questioner, after this, what came next? Answer, I am Ra. Awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. You have called this by various vibrational sound complexes, the most common to your ears being Logos, or love. The Creator is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle called by us as closely as we can create understanding learning in your language, intelligent infinity. Question 13.8. Questioner, can you state the next step? Answer, I am Ra. The next step is still at this space-time nexus in your illusion achieving its progression as you may see it in your illusion. The next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle following the law of one in one of its primal distortions, freedom of will. Thus, many dimensions, infinite in number, are possible. The energy moves from the intelligent infinity due first to the outpouring of randomized creative force, this then creating patterns which in holographic style appear as the entire creation no matter which direction or energy is explored. These patterns of energy begin then to regularize their own local, shall we say, rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. Question 13.9. Questioner, then can you tell me how the galaxy and planetary systems were formed? Answer, I am Ra. You must imagine a great leap of thought in this query, for at the last query the physical, as you call it, universes were not yet born. The energies moved in increasingly intelligent patterns until the individualization of various energies emanating from the creative principle of intelligent infinity became such as to be co-creators. Thus the so-called physical matter began. The concept of light is instrumental in grasping this great leap of thought, as this vibrational distortion of infinity is the building block of that which is known as matter, the light being intelligent and full of energy, thus being the first distortion of intelligent infinity which was called by the creative principle. This light of love was made to have in its occurrences of being certain characteristics, among them the infinite whole paradoxically described by the straight line, as you would call it. This paradox is responsible for the shape of the various physical illusion entities you call solar systems, galaxies, and planets of revolving and tending towards the lenticular. Question 13.10. Questioner, I think I made an error in getting ahead of the process you were describing. Would it be helpful to fill in that great leap due to the mistake I made? Answer, I am Ra. I attempted to bridge the gap. However, you may question me in any manner you deem appropriate. Question 13.11. Questioner, taking the question just before the one I asked about the galaxies and planets and tell me what the next step was from there. Answer, I am Ra. The steps, as you call them, are, at the pointed question, simultaneous and infinite. Question 13.12. Questioner, can you tell me how intelligent infinity became, shall we say, I'm having difficulty with the language, how intelligent infinity became individualized from itself? Answer, I am Ra. This is an appropriate question. The intelligent infinity discerned a concept. This concept was discerned to be freedom of will of awareness. This concept was finity. This was the first and primal paradox or distortion of the law of one. Thus the one intelligent infinity invested itself in an exploration of manyness. Due to the infinite possibilities of intelligent infinity, there is no ending to manyness. The exploration, thus, is free to continue infinitely in an eternal present. Question 13.3. Questioner, was the galaxy that we are in created by the infinite intelligence, or was it created by a portion of the infinite intelligence? Answer, I am Ra. The galaxy and all other things of material of which you are aware are products of individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As each exploration began, it, in turn, found its focus and became co-creator. Using intelligent infinity, each portion created an universe and allowing the rhythms of free choice to flow, playing with the infinite spectrum of possibilities. Each individualized portion channeled the love light into what you might call intelligent energy, thus creating the so-called natural laws of any particular universe. Each universe, in turn, individualized to a focus, becoming, in turn, co-creator and allowing further diversity, thus creating further intelligent energies, regularizing or causing natural laws to appear in the vibrational patterns of what you would call a solar system. Thus, each solar system has its own, shall we say, local coordinate system of illusory natural laws. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in an holographic picture, the one creator which is infinity. Thus all begins and ends in mystery. Question 13.14. Questioner, can you tell me how the individualized infinity created our galaxy, and if the same portion created our planetary system, and if so, how this came about? Answer, I am Ra. We may have misperceived your query. We were under the distortion impression that we had responded to this particular query. Would you restate the query? Question 13.15. Questioner, I am wondering if the planetary system that we are in now was all created at once, or if our sun was created first and the planets later. Answer, I am Ra. The process is from the larger, in your illusion, to the smaller. Thus the co-creator, individualizing the galaxy, created energy patterns which then focused in multitudinous focuses of further conscious awareness of intelligent infinity. Thus the solar system of which you experience in habitation is of its own patterns, rhythms, and so-called natural laws which are unique to itself. However, the progression is from the galaxy spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy, to the planetary spiraling energy, to the experiential circumstances of spiraling energy which begin the first density of awareness of consciousness of planetary entities. Question 13.16. Questioner, could you tell me about this first density of planetary entities? Answer, I am Ra. Each step recapitulates intelligent infinity in its discovery of awareness. In a planetary environment, all begins in what you would call chaos, energy undirected and random in its infinity. Slowly, in your terms of understanding, there forms a focus of self-awareness. Thus the logos moves. Light comes to form the darkness, according to the co-creator's patterns and vibratory rhythms, so constructing a certain type of experience. This begins with first density, which is the density of consciousness, the mineral and water life. Upon the planet learning from fire and wind the awareness of being. This is the first density. Question 13.17. Questioner, how does this first density then progress to greater awareness? Answer, I am Ra. The spiraling energy, which is the characteristic of what you call light, moves in a straight line spiral, thus giving spirals an inevitable vector upwards to a more comprehensive beingness with regards to intelligent infinity. Thus, first-dimensional beingness strives towards the second density lessons of a type of awareness which includes growth rather than dissolution or random change. Question 13.18. Questioner, could you define what you mean by growth? Answer, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the difference between first vibrational mineral or water life and the lower second density beings which begin to move about within and upon its being. This movement is the characteristic of second density, the striving towards light and growth. Question 13.19. Questioner, by striving towards light, what do you mean? Answer, I am Ra. A very simplistic example of second density growth striving towards light as that of the leaf striving towards the source of light. Question 13.20. Questioner, is there any physical difference between first and second density? For instance, if I could see both a first and second density planet side by side in my present condition, could I see both of them? Would they both be physical to me? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. All of the octave of your densities would be clearly visible were not the fourth through the seventh freely choosing not to be visible. Question 13.21. Questioner, then how does the second density progress to the third? Answer, I am Ra. The second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness. The striving takes place through the higher second density forms who are invested by third density beings with an identity to the extent that they become self-aware mind-body complexes, thus becoming mind-body-spirit complexes and entering third density, the first density of consciousness of spirit. Question 13.22. Questioner, what is the density level of our planet Earth at this time? Answer, I am Ra. The sphere upon which you dwell is third density in its beingness of mind, body, spirit complexes. It is now in a space-time continuum, fourth density. This is causing a somewhat difficult harvest. Question 13.23. Questioner, how does a third density planet become a fourth density planet? Answer, I am Ra. This will be the last full question. The fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind, body, spirit complexes of both individual and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of becoming able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point the compass in one direction. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love, sometimes called by your people the vibration of understanding, is not effective with your present societal complex. Thus, the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing the harvest. However, there are few to harvest. Question 13.24. Questioner, I would like to apologize for sometimes asking inappropriate questions. It's difficult sometimes to ask precisely the right question. I don't wish to go over any ground that we've already covered. I noticed that this period is slightly shorter than previous work sessions. Is there a reason for this? Answer, I am Ra. This instrument's vital energy is somewhat low. Question 13.25. Questioner, I am assuming from this that it would be a good idea not to have another session today. Is that correct? Answer, I am Ra. It is well to have a session later if it is acceptable that we monitor this instrument and cease using it when it becomes low in the material which we take from it. We do not wish to deplete this instrument. Question 13.26. Questioner, this is always acceptable in any session. I would ask my final question. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or aid in this communication? Answer, I am Ra. It is well. Each is most conscientious. Continue in the same. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 14.1. Questioner, after going over this morning's work, I thought it might be helpful to fill in a few things. You said that the second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness, or self-awareness. The striving takes place through higher second density forms being invested by third density beings. Could you explain what you mean by this? Answer, I am Ra. Much as you would put on a vestment, so do your third density beings invest or clothe some second density beings with self-awareness. This is often done through the opportunity of what you call pets. It has also been done by various other means of investiture. These include many so-called religious practice complexes which personify and send love to various natural second density beings in their group form. Question 14.2. Questioner, when this earth was second density, how did the second density beings on it become so invested? Answer, I am Ra. There was not this type of investment as spoken, but the simple third density investment, which is the line of spiraling light calling distortion upward from density to density. The process takes longer when there is no investment made by incarnate third density beings. Question 14.3. Questioner, then what was the second density form? What did it look like that became Earthman in the third density? What did he look like in the second density? Answer, I am Ra. The difference between second and third density bodily forms would in many cases have been more like one to the other. In the case of your planetary sphere, the process was interrupted by those who incarnated here from the planetary sphere you call Mars. They were adjusted by genetic changing and, therefore, there was some difference which was of a very noticeable variety rather than the gradual raising of the bipedal forms upon your second density level to third density level. This has nothing to do with the so-called placement of the soul. This has only to do with the circumstances of the influx of those from that culture. Question 14.4. Questioner, I understand from previous material that this occurred 75,000 years ago. It was then that our third density process of evolution began. Can you tell me the history, hitting only the points of development, shall I say, that occurred within this 75,000 years, any point when contact was made to aid this development? Answer, I am Ra. The first attempt to aid your peoples was at the time 75,000. This attempt 75,000 of your years ago has been previously described by us. The next attempt was approximately 58,000 of your years ago, continuing for a long period in your measurement, with those of mu as you call this race or mind, body, spirit social complex. The next attempt was long in coming and occurred approximately 13,000 of your years ago when some intelligent information was offered to those of Atlantis, this being of the same type of healing and crystal working of which we have spoken previously. The next attempt was 11,000 of your years ago. These are approximations as we are not totally able to process your space-time continuum measurement system. This was in what you call Egypt, and of this we have also spoken. The same beings who came with us returned approximately 3,500 years later in order to attempt to aid the South American mind, body, spirit social complex once again. However, the pyramids of those so-called cities were not to be used in the appropriate fashion. Therefore, this was not pursued further. There was a landing approximately 3,000 of your years ago also in your South America, as you call it. There were a few attempts to aid your peoples approximately 2,300 years ago, this in the area of Egypt. The remaining part of the cycle, We have never been gone from your fifth dimension and have been working in this last minor cycle to prepare for harvest. Question 14.5. Questioner, was the Egyptian visit of 11,000 years ago the only one where you actually walked the earth? Answer, I am Ra. I understand your question distorted in the direction of selves rather than other selves. We of the vibratory sound complex, Ra, have walked among you only at that time. Question 14.6. Questioner, I understood you to say in an earlier session that pyramids were built to ring the earth. How many pyramids were built? Ra, Elam Ra. There are 6 balancing pyramids and 52 others built for additional healing and initiatory work among your mind, body, spirit social complexes. Question 14.7. Questioner, what is a balancing pyramid? Answer, I am Ra. Imagine, if you will, the many force fields of the earth in their geometrically precise web. Energies stream into the earth planes, as you would call them, from magnetically determined points. Due to growing thought-formed distortions in understanding of the law of one, the planet itself was seen to have the potential for imbalance. The balancing pyramidal structures were charged with crystals which drew the appropriate balance from the energy forces streaming into the various geometrical centers of electromagnetic energy which surround and shape the planetary sphere. Question 14.8. Questioner, let me make a synopsis and you tell me if I am correct. All of these visits for the last 75,000 years were for the purpose of giving to the people of Earth an understanding of the law of one, and in this way allowing them to progress upward through the 4th, 5th and 6th densities. This was to be a service to Earth. The pyramids were used also in giving the law of one in their own way. The balancing pyramids, I'm not quite sure if... Am I right so far? Answer, I am Ra. You are correct to the limits of the precision allowed by language. Question 14.9. Questioner, did the balancing pyramid prevent the Earth from changing its axis? Answer, I am Ra. This query is not clear. Please restate. Question 14.10. Questioner, does the balancing refer to the individual who is initiated in the pyramid or does it refer to the physical balancing of the Earth on its axis in space? Answer, I am Ra. The balancing pyramidal structures could be and were used for individual initiation. However, the use of these pyramids was also designed for the balancing of the planetary energy web. The other pyramids are not placed correctly for earth healing but for healing of mind, body, spirit complexes. It came to our attention that your density was distorted towards what is called by our distortion understanding of third density on your planetary sphere, more of a time-space continuum in one incarnation pattern in order to have a fuller opportunity to learn teach the laws or ways of the primal distortion of the law of one which is love. Question 14.11. Questioner, I want to make this statement and you tell me if I am correct. The balancing pyramids were to do what we call increase the lifespan of entities here so that they would gain more wisdom of the law of one while they were in the physical at one time. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. However, the pyramids not called by us by the vibrational sound complex, balancing pyramids, were more numerous and were used exclusively for the above purpose and the teach learning of healers to charge and enable these processes. Question 14.12. Questioner, George Van Tassel built a machine in our western desert called an integration. Will this machine work for that purpose of increasing the lifespan? Answer, I am Ra. The machine is incomplete and will not function for the above-mentioned purpose. Question 14.13. Questioner, who gave George the information on how to build it? Answer, I am Ra. There were 2 contacts which gave the entity with the vibratory sound complex, George, this information. One was of the Confederation. The second was of the Orion Group. The Confederation was caused to find the distortion towards non-contact due to the alteration of the vibrational mind complex patterns of the one called George. Thus, the Orion Group used this instrument. However, this instrument, though confused, was a mind, body, spirit complex devoted at the heart to service to others, so that, shall we say, worst that could be done was to discredit this source. Question 14.14. Questioner, would there be any value to the people of this planet now to complete this machine? Answer, I am Ra. The harvest is now. There is not at this time any reason to include efforts along these distortions toward longevity, but rather to encourage distortions toward seeking the heart of self, for this which resides clearly in the violet ray energy field will determine the harvesting of each mind, body, spirit complex. Question 14.15. Questioner, going back to when we started this 75,000-year period, there was a harvest 25,000 years after the start, which would make it 50,000 years ago. Can you tell me how many were harvested at that time? Answer, I am Ra. The harvest was none. Question 14.16. Questioner, there was no harvest. What about 25,000 years ago? Answer, I am Ra. A harvesting began taking place in the latter portion, as you measure time-space of the second cycle, with individuals finding the gateway to intelligent infinity. The harvest of that time, though extremely small, was those entities of extreme distortion towards service to the entities who were now to repeat the major cycle. These entities, therefore, remained in third density, although they could, at any moment present nexus, leave this density through use of intelligent infinity. Question 14.17. Questioner, then in the harvest 25,000 years ago, the entities who could have been harvested into the fourth density chose to remain here in service to this planetary population. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Thus, there was no harvest, but there were harvestable entities who shall choose the manner of their entrance into fourth dimension. Question 14.18. Questioner, then for the last 2,300 years you have been working to create as large a harvest as possible at the end of the total 75,000-year cycle. Can you state with respect to the law of one why you do this? Answer, I am Ra. I speak for the social memory complex termed Ra. We came among you to aid you. Our efforts in service were perverted. Our desire then is to eliminate as far as possible the distortions caused by those misreading our information and guidance. The general cause of service such as the Confederation offers is that of the primal distortion of the law of one, which is service. The one being of the creation is like unto a body, if you will accept this third density analogy. Would we ignore a pain in the leg? A bruise upon the skin? A cut which is festering? No. There is no ignoring at all. We, the entities of sorrow, chose as our service the attempt to heal the sorrow which we are calling analogous to the pains of a physical body complex distortion. Question 14.19. Questioner, of what density level is Ra? Answer, I am Ra. I am 6th density with a strong seeking towards 7th density. The harvest for us will be in only approximately 2.5 million of your years, and it is our desire to be ready for harvest as it approaches in our space-time continuum. Question 14.20. Questioner, and you ready yourselves for this harvest through the service you can provide. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. We offer the law of one, the solving of paradoxes, the balancing of love-light and light-love. Question 14.21. Questioner, how long is one of your cycles? Answer, I am Ra. One of our cycles computes to 75 million of your years. Question 14.22. Questioner, 75 million years? Answer, I am Ra. That is correct. Question 14.23. Questioner, in your service in giving the law of one, do you work with any other planets than Earth at this time, or just Earth? Answer, I am Ra. We work only with this planetary sphere at this time. Question 14.24. Questioner, you stated that you were called by 352,000 Earth entities. Does this mean that it is this number that will understand and accept the law of one? Answer, I am Ra. We cannot estimate the correctness of your statement, for those who call are not in every case able to understand the answer to their calling. Moreover, those who were not calling previously may, with great trauma, discover the answers to the call nearly simultaneously with their late call. There is no time-spacing call. Therefore, we cannot estimate the number of your mind, body, spirit complexes which will, in your space-time continuum distortion, hear and understand. Question 14.25. Questioner, how do you normally perform your service of giving the law of one? How have you done this over the last 2,300 years? How have you normally given this to Earth people? Answer, I am Ra. We have used channels such as this one, but in most cases the channels feel inspired by dreams and visions without being aware, consciously, of our identity or existence. This particular group has been accentuatedly trained to recognize such contact. This makes this group able to be aware of a focal or vibrational source of information. Question 14.26. Questioner, when you contact the entities in their dreams and otherwise, these entities first have to be seeking in the direction of the law of one. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. For example, the entities of the nation Egypt were in a state of pantheism, as you may call the distortion toward separate worship of various portions of the Creator. We were able to contact one whose orientation was toward the One. Question 14.27. Questioner, I assume that as the cycle ends and inconveniences occur, there will be some entities who start seeking or be catalyzed into seeking because of the trauma and will then hear your words telepathically or in written form such as this book. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. You are correct except in understanding that the inconveniences have begun. Question 14.28. Questioner, can you tell me who was responsible for transmitting the book OWASP? Answer, I am Ra. This was transmitted by one of Confederation Social Memory Complex Status whose idea, as offered to the Council, was to use some of the known physical history of the so-called religions or religious distortions of your cycle in order to veil and partially unveil aspects or primal distortions of the law of one. All names can be taken to be created for their vibrational characteristics. The information buried within has to do with the deeper understanding of love and light, and the attempts of infinite intelligence through many messengers to learn those entities of your sphere. Question 14.29. Questioner, have there been any other books that you can name that are available for this purpose that have been given by the Confederation? Answer, I am Ra. We cannot share this information, for it would distort your discernment patterns in your future. You may ask about a particular volume. Question 14.30. Questioner, who transmitted the Urantia book? Answer, I am Ra. This was given by a series of discarnate entities of your own Earth planes, the so-called inner planes. This material is not passed by the Council. Question 14.31. Questioner, who spoke through Edgar Cayce? Answer, I am Ra. No entity spoke through Edgar Cayce. Question 14.32. Questioner, where did the information come from that Edgar Cayce channeled? Answer, I am Ra. We have explained before that the intelligent infinity is brought into intelligent energy from 8th density or octave. The one sound vibratory complex called Edgar used this gateway to view the present, which is not the continuum you experience but the potential social memory complex of this planetary sphere. The term your peoples have used for this is the Akashic Record, or the Hall of Records. This is the last question which you may now ask. Question 14.33. Questioner, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to help during the transmission? Answer, I am Ra. We only reiterate the importance of alignment. This instrument is placed 0.2 degrees away from the direction of the resting place, which is correct. This may be, shall we say, by sight and the instrument reminded. You are being conscientious. Is there any brief question we may answer before this session is closed? Question 14.34. Questioner, can you tell me if we are accomplishing our effort reasonably well? Answer, I am Ra. The law is one. There are no mistakes. I am Ra. I leave this instrument in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. I communicate now. Question 15.1. Questioner, I would like to apologize for any past and future stupid questions. They are due to the fact that I am searching for the proper entry into the investigation of the law of one. I would like to ask about the use of the instrument, if it is a function of the time we use the instrument or the amount of words or information the instrument gives. In other words, do I have to hurry and ask questions, or can I take my time to ask questions? Answer, I am Ra. There are two portions to your query. Firstly, this instrument's reserve of vital energy, which is a product of body, mind, and spirit distortions in the various complexes, is the key to the length of time which we may expend using this instrument. We searched your group and we contacted you, for each in your group possesses significantly more vital energy of the body complex. However, this instrument was tuned most appropriately by the mind, body, spirit complex distortions of its beingness and this illusion. Therefore, we remained with this instrument. Secondly, we communicate at a set rate which is dependent upon our careful manipulation of this instrument. We cannot be more, as you would say, quick. Therefore, you may ask questions speedily, but the answers we have to offer are at a set pace given. Question 15.2. Questioner, this isn't exactly what I meant. If it takes me, say 45 minutes to ask my questions, does that give the instrument only 15 minutes to answer, or could the instrument go over an hour, all totaled, with her answers? Answer, I am Ra. The energy required for this contact is entered into this instrument by a function of time. Therefore, the time is the factor, as we understand your query. Question 15.3. Questioner, then I should ask my questions rapidly so that I do not reduce the time. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. You shall do as you deem fit. However, we may suggest that to obtain the answers you require may mean that you invest some of what you experience as time. Although you lose the answer time, you gain thereby in the specificity of the answer. At many times in the past, we have needed clarification of hastily phrased questions. Question 15.4. Questioner, thank you. The first question is this: why does rapid aging occur on this planet? Answer, I am Ra. Rapid aging occurs upon this third density planet due to an ongoing imbalance of receptor web complex in the etheric portion of the energy field of this planet. The thought-formed distortions of your peoples have caused the energy streamings to enter the planetary magnetic atmosphere, if you would so term this web of energy patterns, in such a way that the proper streamings are not correctly imbued with balanced vibratory light love from the, shall we say, cosmic level of this octave of existence. Question 15.5. Questioner, do I assume correctly that one of your attempts in service to this planet was to help the population more fully understand and practice the law of one so that this rapid aging could be changed to normal aging? Answer, I am Ra. You are assumed correctly to a great degree. Question 15.5. Questioner, then it would be very beneficial for the people of this planet in practicing the law of one to learn ways of service at this time. Am I correct? Answer, I am Ra. You are correct. If you will observe those oriented through a lifetime experiential distortion complex from near the beginning of that experience, you will observe a relatively youthful, as you would call it, appearance. Question 15.7. Questioner, what is the greatest service that our population on this planet could perform individually? Answer, I am Ra. There is but one service. The law is one. The offering of self to Creator is the greatest service, the unity, the fountainhead. The entity who seeks the one Creator is with infinite intelligence. From this seeking, from this offering, a great multiplicity of opportunities will evolve depending upon the mind, body, spirit complexes distortions with regard to the various illusory aspects or energy centers of the various complexes of your illusion. Thus, some become healers, some workers, some teachers, and so forth. Question 15.8. Questioner, if an entity were perfectly balanced with respect to the law of one on this planet, would he undergo the aging process? Answer, I am Ra. A perfectly balanced entity would become tired rather than visibly aged. the lessons being learned, the entity would depart. However, this is appropriate and is a form of aging which your peoples do not experience. The understanding comes slowly, the body complex decomposing more rapidly. Question 15.9. Questioner, can you tell me a little more about the word balancing, as we are using it? Answer, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the one infinite. You have no picture. Thus, the process begins. Love creating light, becoming love light, streams into the planetary sphere according to the electromagnetic web of points or nexi of entrance. These streamings are then available to the individual who, like the planet, is a web of electromagnetic energy fields with points or nexi of entrance. In a balanced individual, each energy center is balanced and functioning brightly and fully. The blockages of your planetary sphere cause some distortion of intelligent energy. The blockages of the mind, body, spirit complex further distort or unbalance this energy. There is one energy. It may be understood as love light or light love or intelligent energy. Question 15.10. Questioner, am I correct to assume that one of the blockages of the mind, body, spirit complex might be, shall we say, ego, and this could be balanced using a worthiness-unworthiness balance? Am I correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect. Question 15.11. Questioner, can you tell me how you balance the ego? Answer, I am Ra. We cannot work with this concept as it is misapplied and understanding cannot come from it. Question 15.12. Questioner, how does an individual go about balancing himself? What is the first step? Answer, I am Ra. The steps are only one, that is, an understanding of the energy centers which make up the mind, body, spirit complex. This understanding may be briefly summarized as follows. The first balancing is of the Morkath, or earth, vibratory energy complex, called the red ray complex. An understanding and acceptance of this energy is fundamental. The next energy complex, which may be blocked, is the emotional, or personal complex, also known as the orange ray complex. This blockage will often demonstrate itself as personal eccentricities or distortions with regard to self-conscious understanding or acceptance of self. The third blockage resembles most closely that which you have called ego. It is the yellow ray or solar plexus center. Blockages in this center will often manifest as distortions toward power manipulation and other social behaviors concerning those close and those associated with the mind, body, spirit complex. Those with blockages in these first three energy centers, or nexi, will have continuing difficulties in ability to further their seeking of the law of one. The center of heart, or green ray, is the center from which third density beings may springboard, shall we say, to infinite intelligence. Blockages in this area may manifest as difficulties in expressing what you may call universal love or compassion. The blue ray center of energy streaming is the center which, for the first time, is outgoing as well as inpouring. Those blocked in this area may have difficulty in grasping the spirit-mind complexes of its own entity and further difficulty in expressing such understandings of self. Entities blocked in this area may have difficulties in accepting communication from other mind, body, spirit complexes. The next center is the pineal or indigo ray center. Those blocked in this center may experience a lessening of the influx of intelligent energy due to manifestations which appear as unworthiness. This is that of which you spoke. As you can see, this is but one of many distortions. Due to the several points of energy influx into the mind, body, spirit complex. The indigo ray balancing is quite central to the type of work which revolves about the spirit complex, which has its influx then into the transformation or transmutation of third density to fourth density, it being the energy center receiving the least distorted outpourings of love light from intelligent energy and also the potential for the key to the gateway of intelligent infinity. The remaining center of energy influx is simply the total expression of the entity's vibratory complex of mind, body and spirit. It is as it will be. Balanced, or imbalanced, has no meaning at this energy level, for it gives and takes in its own balance. Whatever the distortion may be, it cannot be manipulated as can the others and, therefore, has no particular importance in viewing the balancing of an entity. Question 15.13. Questioner, you previously gave us information on what we should do in balancing. Is there any publishable information you can give us now about particular exercises or methods of balancing these energy centers? Answer, I am Ra. The exercises given for publication seen in comparison with the material now given are in total a good beginning. It is important to allow each seeker to enlighten itself rather than for any messenger to attempt in language to teach-learn for the entity, thus being teach-learner and learn-teacher. This is not in balance with your third density. We learn from you. We teach to you. Thus we teach-learn. If we learned for you, this would cause imbalance in the direction of the distortion of free will. They are other items of information. Allowable. However, you have not yet reached these items in your line of questioning, and it is our belief feeling complex that the questioner shall shape this material in such a way that your mind, body, spirit complexes shall have entry to it. Thus we answer your queries as they arise into your mind complex. Question 15.14. Questioner, yesterday you stated that the harvest is now. There is not at this time any reason to include efforts along this line of longevity, but rather to encourage efforts to seek the heart of self. This which resides clearly in the violet ray energy field will determine the harvest of the mind, body, spirit complex. Could you tell us the best way to seek the heart of self? Answer, I am Ra. We have given you this information in several wordings. However, we can only say the material for your understanding is the self, the mind, body, spirit complex. You have been given information upon healing, as you call this distortion. This information may be seen in a more general context as ways to understand the self. The understanding, experiencing, accepting, and merging of self with self and other self, and finally with the Creator, is the path to the heart of self. In each infinitesimal part of yourself resides the one in all of its power. Therefore, we can only encourage these lines of contemplation or prayer as a means of objectively using or combining various understandings to enhance the seeking process. Without such a method of reversing the analytical process, one could not integrate into unity the many understandings gained in such seeking. Question 15.15. Questioner, I don't mean to ask the same question twice, but there are some areas that I consider so important that possibly a greater understanding may be obtained if the answer is restated a number of times. In other words, I thank you for your patience. Yesterday, you also mentioned that when there was no harvest at the end of the last 25,000-year period, there were harvestable entities who shall choose the manner of their entrance into the fourth density. Could you tell me what you mean by, they shall choose the manner of their entry into the fourth density? Answer, I am Ra. These shepherds, or, as some have called them, the Elders, shall choose the time-space of their leaving. They are unlikely to leave until their other selves are harvestable also. Question 15.16. Questioner, what do you mean by their other selves being harvestable? Answer, I am Ra. The other selves with whom these beings are concerned are those which did not attain harvest during the second major cycle. Question 15.17. Questioner, could you tell me just a small amount of the history of what you call the Elders? Answer, I am Ra. The question is unclear. Please restate. Question 15.18. Questioner, I asked this question because I have heard of the Elders before in a book, Road in the Sky, by George Hunt Williamson, and I was wondering if this Elders was the same that he talked about? Answer, I am Ra. The question now resolves itself, for we have spoken previously of the manner of decision-making which caused these entities to remain here upon the closing of the second major cycle of your current master cycle. There are some distortions in the descriptions of the one known as Micah. However, these distortions have to do primarily with the fact that these entities are not a social memory complex, but rather a group of mind, body, spirit complexes dedicated to service. These entities work together, but are not completely unified. Thus, they do not completely see each the other's thoughts, feelings, and motives. However, their desire to serve is the fourth-dimensional type of desire, thus molding them into what you may call a brotherhood. Question 15.19. Questioner, why do you call them the Elders? Answer, I am Ra. We called them thusly to acquaint you, the questioner, with their identity as is understood by your mind complex distortion. Question 15.20. Questioner, are there any wanderers with this Elders? Answer, I am Ra. These are planetary entities harvested, wanderers only in the sense that they chose in fourth density love, to immediately reincarnate in third density rather than proceeding towards fourth density. This causes them to be wanderers of a type, wanderers, who have never left the earth plane because of their free will rather than because of their vibrational level. Question 15.21. Questioner, in yesterday's material you mentioned that the first distortion was the distortion of free will. Is there a sequence, a first, second, and third distortion of the law of one? Answer, I am Ra. Only up to a very short point. After this point, the manyness of distortions are equal one to another. The first distortion, free will, finds focus. This is the second distortion known to you as Logos, the creative principle or love. This intelligent energy thus creates a distortion known as light. From these three distortions come many, many hierarchies of distortions, each having its own paradoxes to be synthesized, no one being more important than another. Question 15.22. Questioner, you also said that you offered the law of one, which is the balancing of love light with light love. Is there any difference between light love and love light? Answer, I am Ra. This will be the final question of this time-space. There is the same difference between love light and light love as there is between teach learning and learn teaching. Love light is the enabler, the power, the energy giver. Light love is the manifestation which occurs when light has been impressed with love. Question 15.23. Questioner, is there anything we can do to make the instrument more comfortable? Can we have 2 sessions today? Answer, I am Ra. This instrument requires a certain amount of manipulation of the physical or body complex due to a stiffness. Other than this, all is well, the energy is being balanced. There is a slight distortion in the mental energy of this instrument due to concern for a loved one, as you call it. This is only slightly lowering the vital energies of the instrument. Given a manipulation, this instrument will be well for another working. Question 15.24. Questioner, by manipulation, do you mean that she should go for a walk or that we should rub her back? Answer, I am Ra. We meant the latter. The understanding must be added that this manipulation be done by one in harmony with the entity. Question 15.25. Questioner, is it possible, since we are wanderers, for you to tell us anything about which our last density was, which density we came from? Ra, I scan each and find it acceptable to share this information. The wanderers in this working are of 2 densities, one the density of 5, that is, of light, one the density of love light, or unity. To express the identity of which came from which density, we observe this to be an infringement upon the free will of each. Therefore, we state simply the 2 densities, both of which are harmoniously oriented towards work together. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 16.1. Questioner, I would like to ask, considering the free will distortion of the law of one, how come the guardians quarantine the earth? Is this quarantine within free will? Answer, I am Ra. The guardians guard the free will distortion of the mind, body, spirit complexes of third density on this planetary sphere. The events which required activation of quarantine were interfering with the free will distortion of mind, body, spirit complexes. Question 16.2. Questioner, I may be wrong, but it seems to me that it would be the free will of, say, the Orion Group, to interfere. How is this balanced with the information which you just gave? Answer, I am Ra. The balancing is from dimension to dimension. The attempts of the so-called crusaders to interfere with free will are acceptable upon the dimension of their understanding. However, the mind, body, spirit complexes of this dimension you call third form a dimension of free will which is not able to, shall we say, recognize in full, the distortions towards manipulation. Thus, in order to balance the dimensional variances in vibration, a quarantine, this being a balancing situation whereby the free will of the Orion Group is not stopped but given a challenge. Meanwhile, the third group is not hindered from free choice. Question 16.3. Questioner, could these windows that occur to let the Orion Group come through once in a while have anything to do with this free will balancing? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.4. Questioner, could you tell me how that works? Answer, I am Ra. The closest analogy would be a random number generator within certain limits. Question 16.5. Questioner, what is the source of this random number generator? Is it created by the Guardians to balance their guarding? Or is it a source other than the Guardians? Answer, I am Ra. All sources are one. However, we understand your query. The window phenomenon is another self-phenomenon from the Guardians. It operates from the dimensions beyond space-time and what you may call the area of intelligent energy. Like your cycles, such balancing, such rhythms are as a clock striking. In the case of the windows, no entities have the clock. Therefore, it seems random. It is not random in the dimension which produces this balance. That is why we stated the analogy was within certain limits. Question 16.6. Questioner, then this window balancing prevents the Guardians from reducing their positive polarization by totally eliminating the Orion contact through shielding. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is partially correct. In effect, the balancing allows an equal amount of positive and negative influx, this balanced by the mind, body, spirit distortions of the social complex. Thus in your particular planetary sphere, less negative, as you would call it, information or stimulus is necessary than positive due to the somewhat negative orientation of your social complex distortion. Question 16.7. Questioner, in this way, total free will is balanced so that individuals may have an equal opportunity to choose service to others or service to self. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.8. Questioner, this is a profound revelation, I believe, in the law of free will. Thank you. This is a minor question further to make an example of this principle, but if the Confederation landed on Earth, they would be taken as gods, breaking the law of free will and thus reducing their polarization of service to all. I assume that the same thing would happen if the Orion Group landed. How would this affect their polarization of service to self if they were able to land and became known as gods? Answer, I am Ra. In the event of mass landing of the Orion Group, the effect of polarization would be strongly toward an increase in the service to self, precisely the opposite of the former opportunity which you mentioned. Question 16.9. Questioner, if the Orion Group was able to land, would this increase their polarization? What I am trying to get at is it better for them to work behind the scenes to get recruits, shall we say, from our planet, the person from our planet going strictly on his own using free will, or is it just as good for the Orion Group to land on our planet and demonstrate remarkable powers and get people like that? Answer, I am Ra. This first instance is, in the long run, shall we put it, more salubrious for the Orion Group in that it does not infringe upon the law of one by landing and, thus, does its work through those of this planet. In the second circumstance, a mass landing would create a loss of polarization due to the infringement upon the free will of the planet. However, it would be a gamble. If the planet were then conquered and became part of the Empire, the free will would then be re-established. This is restrained in action due to the desire of the Orion Group to progress towards the one creator. This desire to progress inhibits the group from breaking the law of confusion. Question 16.10. Questioner, you mentioned the word empire in relation to the Orion Group. I have thought for some time that the movie Star Wars was somehow an allegory for what is actually happening. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct in the same way that a simple children's story is an allegory for physical, philosophical, social, complex distortion understanding. Question 16.11. Questioner, is there a harvest of entities oriented towards service to self like there is a harvest of those oriented towards service to others? Answer, I am Ra. There is one harvest. Those able to enter fourth density through vibrational complex levels may choose the manner of their further seeking of the one creator. Question 16.12. Questioner, then as we enter the fourth density there will be a split, shall we say, and part of the individuals who go into the fourth density will go into planets or places where there is service to others and part will go into places where there is service to self. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.13. Questioner, can you tell me the origin of the 10 Commandments? Answer, I am Ra. The origin of these commandments follows the law of negative entities impressing information upon positively oriented mind, body, spirit complexes. The information attempted to copy or ape positivity while retaining negative characteristics. Question 16.14. Questioner, was this done by the Orion Group? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.15. Questioner, what was their purpose in doing this? Answer, I am Ra. The purpose of the Orion Group, as mentioned before, is conquest and enslavement. This is done by finding and establishing an elite and causing others to serve the elite through various devices such as the laws you mentioned and others given by this entity. Question 16.16. Questioner, was the recipient of the commandments positively or negatively oriented? Answer, I am Ra. The recipient was one of extreme positivity, thus accounting for some of the pseudo-positive characteristics of the information received. As with contacts which are not successful, this entity, vibratory complex, Mish, did not remain a credible influence among those who had first heard the philosophy of one, and this entity was removed from this third density vibratory level in a lessened or saddened state, having lost, what you may call, the honor and faith with which he had begun the conceptualization of the law of one and the freeing of those who were of his tribes, as they were called at that time-space. Question 16.17. Questioner, if this entity was positively oriented, how was the Orion Group able to contact him? Answer, I am Ra. This was an intensive, shall we say, battleground between positively oriented forces of Confederation origin and negatively oriented sources. The one called Mish was open to impression and received the law of one in its most simple form. However, the information became negatively oriented due to his people's pressure to do specific physical things in the third density planes. This left the entity open for the type of information and philosophy of a self-service nature. Question 16.18. Questioner, it would be wholly unlike an entity fully aware of the knowledge of the law of one to ever say, thou shalt not. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.19. Questioner, can you give me some kind of history of your social memory complex and how you became aware of the law of one? Answer, I am Ra. The path of our learning is graven in the present moment. There is no history, as we understand your concept. Picture, if you will, a circle of being. We know the Alpha and Omega as infinite intelligence. The circle never ceases. It is present. The densities we have traversed at various points in the circle correspond to the characteristics of cycles. First, the cycle of awareness. Second, the cycle of growth. Third, the cycle of self-awareness. Fourth, the cycle of love or understanding. Fifth, the cycle of light or wisdom. Sixth, the cycle of light-love, love-light or unity. Seventh, the gateway cycle. Eighth, the octave which moves into a mystery we do not plan. Question 16.20. Questioner, thank you very much. In previous material, before we communicated with you, It was stated by the Confederation that there is actually no past or future, that all is present. Would this be a good analogy? Answer: I am Ra. There is past, present, and future in third density. In an overview such as an entity may have, removed from the space-time continuum, it may be seen that in the cycle of completion there exists only the present. We, ourselves, seek to learn this understanding. At the seventh level or dimension, we shall, if our humble efforts are sufficient, become one with all, thus having no memory, no identity, no past or future, but existing in the all. Question 16.21. Questioner: does this mean that you would have awareness of all that is? Answer: I am Ra. This is partially correct. It is our understanding that it would not be our awareness, but simply awareness of the Creator. In the Creator is all that there is. Therefore, this knowledge would be available. Question 16.22. Questioner: I was wondering how many inhabited planets there are in our galaxy and if they all reach higher density by the law of one. It doesn't seem that there would be any other way to reach higher density. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. Please restate your query. Question 16.23. Questioner: how many inhabited planets are there in our galaxy? Answer: I am Ra. We are assuming that you intend all dimensions of consciousness or densities of awareness in this question. Approximately 1/5 of all planetary entities contain awareness of one or more densities. Some planets are hospitable only for certain densities. Your planet, for instance, is at this time hospitable for densities 1, 2, 3, and 4. Question 16.24. Questioner: roughly how many total planets in this galaxy of stars that we are in are aware regardless of density? Answer: I am Ra. Approximately 67 million. Question 16.25. Questioner: can you tell me what percentage of those are third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. density? Answer: I am Ra. A percentage 17 for first density, a percentage 20 for second density, a percentage 27 for third density, a percentage 16 for fourth density, a percentage 6 for fifth density. The other information must be withheld. Question 16.26. Questioner: of these first 5 densities, have all of the planets progressed from the third density by knowledge and application of the law of one? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.27. Questioner: then the only way for a planet to get out of the situation that we are in is for the population to become aware of and start practicing the law of one. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.28. Questioner: can you tell me what percentage of the third, fourth, and fifth density planets which you have spoken of here are polarized negatively towards service to self? Answer: I am Ra. This is not a query to which we may speak given the law of confusion. We may say only that the negatively or self-service-oriented planetary spheres are much fewer. To give you exact numbers would not be appropriate. Question 16.29. Questioner: I would like to make an analogy as to why there are fewer negatively oriented, and then ask you if the analogy is good. In a positively oriented society with service to others, it would be simple to move a large boulder by getting everyone to help move it. In a society oriented towards service to self, it would be much more difficult to get everyone to work for the good of all to move the boulder. Therefore, it is much easier to get things done to create the service to others principle and to grow in positively oriented communities than in negatively oriented communities. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.30. Questioner: thank you very much. Can you tell me how the Confederation of Planets was formed and why? Answer: I am Ra. The desire to serve begins, in the dimension of love or understanding, to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex. Thus, those percentiles of planetary entities, plus approximately 4% more of whose identity we cannot speak, found themselves long ago in your time seeking the same thing, service to others. The relationship between these entities as they entered an understanding of other beings, other planetary entities, and other concepts of service was to share and continue together these commonly held goals of service. Thus, each voluntarily placed the social memory complex data in what you may consider a central thought complex available to all. This then created a structure whereby each entity could work in its own service while calling upon any other understanding needed to enhance the service. This is the cause of the formation and the manner of the working of the Confederation. Question 16.31. Questioner: with such a large number of planets in this galaxy, you say that there are approximately 500 planets in the Confederation. There seems to be a relatively small number of Confederation planets around. Is there a reason for it? Answer: I am Ra. There are many confederations. This confederation works with the planetary spheres of 7 of your galaxies, if you will, and is responsible for the callings of the densities of these galaxies. Question 16.32. Questioner: would you define the word galaxy as you just used it? Answer: I am Ra. We use that term in this sense as you would use star systems. Question 16.33. Questioner: I'm a little bit confused as to how many total planets the Confederation that you are in serves. Answer: I am Ra. I see the confusion. We have difficulty with your language. The galaxy term must be split. We call galaxy the vibrational complex that is local. Thus, your sun is what we would call the center of a galaxy. We see you have another meaning for this term. Question 16.34. Questioner: yes. In our science, the term galaxy refers to the lenticular star system that contains millions and millions of stars. There was a confusion about this in one of our earlier communications, and I'm glad to get it cleared up. Using the term galaxy in the sense that I just stated, using the lenticular star system that contains millions of stars, do you know of evolution in other galaxies besides this one? Answer: I am Ra. We are aware of life in infinite capacity. You are correct in this assumption. Question 16.35. Questioner: can you tell me if the progression of life in other galaxies is similar to the progression of life in our galaxy? Answer: I am Ra. The progression is somewhat close to the same, asymptotically approaching congruency throughout infinity. The free choosing of what you would call a galactic system causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another. Question 16.36. Questioner: then the law of one is truly universal in creating a progression towards the 8th density in all galaxies. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. Question 16.37. Questioner: I am assuming that it is not necessary for an individual to understand the law of one to go from the 3rd to the 4th density. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. It is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand it in order for it to be harvestable. Understanding is not of this density. Question 16.38. Questioner: that is a very important point. I used the wrong word. What I meant to say was that I believed that it was not necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to go from the 3rd to the 4th density. Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.39. Questioner: at what point in the densities is it necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one in order to progress? Answer: I am Ra. The 5th density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor duty of the law of one. This responsibility honor is the foundation of this vibration. Question 16.40. Questioner: can you tell me a little more about this honor responsibility concept? Answer: I am Ra. Each responsibility is an honor, each honor a responsibility. Question 16.41. Questioner: can you tell me of the silver flecks that we have found sometimes on our faces or elsewhere? Answer: I am Ra. These of which you speak are a materialization of a subjectively oriented signpost indicating to one mind body, spirit complex, and no other, a meaning of subjective nature. Question 16.42. Questioner, who creates these silver flecks? Answer, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the increasing potential for learned teaching. At some point a sign will be given indicating the appropriateness or importance of the learned teaching. The entity itself, in cooperation with the inner planes, creates whatever signpost is most understandable or noticeable to it. Question 16.43. Questioner, I understand that we ourselves create this. Answer, I am Ra. Entities consciously do not create these. The roots of mind complex, having touched in understanding, intelligent infinity, create them. Question 16.44. Questioner, thank you. Is it possible for you to give a short description of the conditions in the fourth density? Answer, I am Ra. We ask you to consider as we speak that there are not words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what is not and approximate what is. Beyond fourth density our ability grows more limited until we become without words. That which fourth density is not, it is not of words unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Approximations of positive statements. It is a plane of type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thought of other selves. It is a plane wherein one is aware of vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced although automatically harmonized by group consensus. Question 16.45. Questioner, could you define the word density as we have been using it? Answer, I am Ra. The term density is a, what you call, mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of existence which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density there are 7 subdensities. Within each subdensity are 7 sub-subdensities. Within each sub-subdensity, 7 sub-sub-subdensities and so on infinitely. Question 16.46. Questioner, I noticed that the time of this session has gone slightly over an hour. I would like to ask at this time if we should go on. What is the condition of the instrument? Answer, I am Ra. This instrument is in balance. It is well to continue if you desire. Question 16.47. Questioner, I understand that each density has 7 subdensities which again have 7 subdensities and so on. This is expanding at a really large rate as each is increased by powers of 7. Does this mean that in any density level anything that you can think of is happening? Answer, I am Ra. From your confusion we select the concept with which you struggle, that being infinity opportunity. You may consider any possibility probability complex as having an existence. Question 16.48. Questioner, do things like daydreams become real in other densities? Answer, I am Ra. This depends upon the nature of the daydream. This is a large subject. Perhaps the simplest thing we can say is if the daydream, as you call it, is one which attracts to self, this then becomes reality to self. If it is a contemplative general daydream, this may enter the infinity of possibility probability complexes and occur elsewhere, having no particular attachment to the energy fields of the Creator. Question 16.49. Questioner, to make this a little more clear, if I were to daydream strongly about building a ship, would this occur in one of these other densities? Answer, I am Ra. This would have or shall occur. Question 16.50. Questioner, then if an entity daydreams strongly about battling an entity, would this occur? Answer, I am Ra. In this case the entity's fantasy concerns the self and other self, this binding the thought form to the possibility probability complex connected with the self which is the creator of this thought form. This then would increase the possibility probability of bringing this into third density occurrence. Question 16.51. Questioner, does the Orion Group use this principle to create conditions favorable to suit their purpose? Answer, I am Ra. We will answer more specifically than the question. The Orion Group uses daydreams of hostile or other negative natures to feed back or strengthen these thought forms. Question 16.52. Questioner, are the many wanderers who have and are coming to our planet subject to the Orion thoughts? Answer, I am Ra. As we have said before, wanderers become completely the creature of third density in mind-body complex. There is just as much chance of such influence to a wanderer entity as to a mind-body spirit complex of this planetary sphere. The only difference occurs in the spirit complex which, if it wishes, has an armor of light, if you will, which enables it to recognize more clearly that which is not as it would appropriately be desired by the mind-body spirit complex. This is not more than bias and cannot be called an understanding. Furthermore, the wanderer is in its own mind, body, spirit, less distorted toward the, shall we say, deviousness of third density positive-negative confusions. Thus, it often does not recognize as easily as a more negative individual the negative nature of thoughts or beings. Question 16.53. Questioner, then would the wanderers, as they incarnate here, be high-priority targets of the Orion Group? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 16.54. Questioner, if a wanderer should be successfully infringed upon, shall I say, by the Orion Group, what would happen to this wanderer when harvest came? Answer, I am Ra. If the wanderer entity demonstrated through action a negative orientation toward his other selves, it would be, as we have said before, caught into the planetary vibration and, when harvested, possibly repeat again the master cycle of third density as a planetary entity. This shall be the last full question of this session. Is there a short question we may answer before we close this session? Question 16.55. Questioner, can the instrument be made more comfortable? Answer, I am Ra. This instrument is as comfortable as it is possible for you to make it given the weakness distortions of its body complex. You are conscientious. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the infinite Creator. Before we communicate by answer, we shall correct an error which we have discovered in the transmission of our information to you. We have difficulty dealing with your time-space. There may again be errors of this type. Feel free to question us that we may recalculate in your time-space measurements. The error we have discovered concerns one of the arrivals of both the Orion Group into your planetary sphere of influence and the corresponding arrival of emissaries of the Confederation. We gave dates of 2,600 years for the Orion entry, 2,300 for Confederation entry. This is incorrect. The recalculation indicates numbers 3,600 for Orion entry, 3,300 for Confederation entry. We communicate now. Question 17.1. Questioner, thank you very much. I would like to say again that we consider it a great honor, privilege, and duty to be able to do this particular work. I would like to reiterate that some of my questions may seem irrelevant at times, but I am trying to ask them in a manner so as to gain a foothold into the application of the law of one. We are now in the fourth density. Will the effects of the fourth density increase in the next 30 years? Will we see more changes in our environment and our effect upon our environment? Answer, I am Ra. The fourth density is a vibrational spectrum. Your time-space continuum has spiraled your planetary sphere and your, what we would call galaxy, what you call star, into this vibration. This will cause the planetary sphere itself to electromagnetically react in its vortices of reception of the instreaming of cosmic forces expressing themselves as vibrational webs so that the Earth thus be fourth density magnetized, as you may call it. This is going to occur with some inconvenience, as we have said before, due to the energies of the thought forms of your peoples which disturb the orderly constructs of energy patterns within your Earth's spirals of energy, which increases entropy and unusable heat. This will cause your planetary sphere to have some ruptures in its outer garment while making itself appropriately magnetized for fourth density. This is the planetary adjustment. You will find a sharp increase in the number of people, as you call mind, body, spirit complexes, whose vibrational potentials include the potential for fourth vibrational distortions. Thus, there will seem to be, shall we say, a new breed. These are those incarnating for fourth density work. There will also be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized mind, body, spirit complexes and social complexes, due to the polarizing conditions of the sharp delineation between fourth density characteristics and third density self-service orientation. Those who remain in fourth density upon this plane will be of the so-called positive orientation. Many will come from elsewhere, for it would appear that with all the best efforts of the Confederation, which includes those from your people's inner planes, inner civilizations, and those from other dimensions, the harvest will still be much less than this planetary sphere is capable of comfortably supporting in service. Question 17.2. Questioner, is it possible by the use of some technique or other to help an entity to reach fourth density level in these last days? Answer, I am Ra. It is impossible to help another being directly. It is only possible to make catalyst available in whatever form, the most important being the radiation of realization of oneness with the Creator from the Self, less important being information such as we share with you. We, ourselves, do not feel an urgency for this information to be widely disseminated. It is enough that we have made it available to 3, 4, or 5. This is extremely ample reward, for if one of these obtains fourth density understanding due to this catalyst, then we shall have fulfilled the law of one in the distortion of service. We encourage a dispassionate attempt to share information without concern for numbers or quick growth among others. That you attempt to make this information available is, in your terms, your service. The attempt, if it reaches one, reaches all. We cannot offer shortcuts to enlightenment. Enlightenment is, of the moment, an opening to intelligent infinity. It can only be accomplished by the self, for the self. Another self cannot teach-learn enlightenment, but only teach-learn information, inspiration, or a sharing of love, of mystery, of the unknown that makes the other self reach out and begin the seeking process that ends in a moment. But who can know when an entity will open the gate to the present? Question 17.3. Questioner, in meditation I got the question about the crater in Russia in the, I believe, Tunguska region. Can you tell me what caused the crater? Answer, I am Ra. The destruction of a fission reactor caused this crater. Question 17.4. Questioner, whose reactor? Answer, I am Ra. This was what you may call a drone sent by Confederation which malfunctioned. It was moved to an area where its destruction would not cause infringement upon the will of mind, body, spirit complexes. It was then detonated. Question 17.5. Questioner, what was its purpose in coming here? Ra, it was a drone designed to listen to the various signals of your peoples. You were, at that time, beginning work in a more technical sphere. We were interested in determining the extent and the rapidity of your advances. This drone was powered by a simple fission motor or engine as you would call it. It was not that type which you now know, but was very small. However, it has the same destructive effect upon third-density molecular structures. Thus as it malfunctioned we felt it was best to pick a place for its destruction rather than attempt to retrieve it, for the possibility-probability modes for this maneuver looked very, very minute. Question 17.6. Questioner, was its danger both blast and radiation? Answer, I am Ra. There is very little radiation, as you know of it, in this particular type of device. There is radiation which is localized, but the localization is such that it does not drift with the winds as does the emission of your somewhat primitive weapons. Question 17.7. Questioner, I believe that analysis has detected very little radiation in the trees in this area. Is this low level of radiation a result of what you are speaking of? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. The amount of radiation is very localized. However, the energy which is released is powerful enough to cause difficulties. Question 17.8. Questioner: then was the Confederation responsible for the Earth receiving nuclear power? Answer: I am Ra. It is a point which one cannot judge what is cause. The basic equation which preceded this work was an equation brought through by a wanderer dedicated to service to the planet. That this work should have become the foundation for instruments of destruction was not intended and was not given. Question 17.9. Questioner: can you tell me who this wanderer was who brought through the equation? Answer: I am Ra. This information seems harmless as this entity is no longer of your planetary third density. This entity was named Sound Vibratory Complex, Albert. Question 17.10. Questioner: thank you. Can you tell me who was the entity before his incarnation on Earth, known as Jesus of Nazareth? Answer: I am Ra. I have difficulty with this question as it is phrased. Can you discover another form for this query? Question 17.11. Questioner: what I meant to say was, can you tell me if Jesus of Nazareth came from the Confederation before incarnation here? Answer: I am Ra. The one known to you as Jesus of Nazareth did not have a name. This entity was a member of fifth density of the highest level of that suboctave. This entity was desirous of entering this planetary sphere in order to share the love vibration in as pure a manner as possible. Thus, this entity received permission to perform this mission. This entity was then a wanderer of no name, of Confederation origins, of fifth density, representing the fifth density understanding of the vibration of understanding or love. This should be fourth. Ra corrects the error in the next answer. Question 17.12. Questioner: did you say the fifth vibration was that of love? Answer: I am Ra. I have made an error. The fourth density being as that which we intended to say, the highest level of fourth density going into the fifth. This entity could have gone on to the fifth but chose instead to return to third for this particular mission. This entity was of the highest suboctave of the vibration of love. This is fourth density. Question 17.13. Questioner: when I am communicating with you as Ra, are you at times individualized as an entity or am I speaking to an entire social memory complex? Answer: I am Ra. You speak with Ra. There is no separation. You would call it social memory complex, thus indicating manyness. To our understanding, you are speaking to an individualized portion of consciousness. Question 17.14. Questioner: am I always speaking to the same individualized portion of consciousness in each of the sessions? Answer: I am Ra. You speak to the same entity through a channel or instrument. This instrument is at times lower in vital energy. This will sometimes hamper our proceedings. However, this instrument has a great deal of faithfulness to the task and gives whatever it is to this task. Therefore, we may continue even when energy is low. This is why we usually speak to the ending of the session due to our estimation of the instrument's levels of vital energy. Question 17.15. Questioner: I would like to make a point clear now that I am sure of myself. The people of this planet, following any religion or no religion at all, or having no intellectual knowledge at all of the law of one, can still be harvested into the fourth density if they are of that vibration. Is that not correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. However, you will find few who are harvestable whose radiance does not cause others to be aware of their, what you may call, spirituality, the quality of the mind-body-spirit complex distortion. Thus, it is not particularly probable that an entity would be completely unknown to his immediate acquaintances as an unusually radiant personality, even were this individual not caught up in any of the distortions of your so-called religious systems. Question 17.16. Questioner: when Jesus of Nazareth incarnated, was there an attempt by the Orion group to discredit him in some way? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 17.17. Questioner: can you tell me what the Orion group did in order to try to cause his downfall? Answer: I am Ra. We may describe in general what occurred. The technique was that of building upon other negatively oriented information. This information had been given by the one whom your peoples called Yahweh. This information involved many strictures upon behavior and promised power of the third density, service to self-nature. These two types of distortions were impressed upon those already oriented to think these thought forms. This eventually led to many challenges of the entity known as Jesus. It eventually led to one, sound vibration complex, Judas, as you call this entity, who believed that it was doing the appropriate thing in bringing about or forcing upon the one you call Jesus the necessity for bringing in a third density planetary power distortion of third density rule over others. This entity, Judas, felt that, if pushed into a corner, the entity you call Jesus would then be able to see the wisdom of using the power of intelligent infinity in order to rule others. The one you call Judas was mistaken in this estimation of the reaction of the entity, Jesus, whose teach-learning was not oriented towards this distortion. This resulted in the destruction of the bodily complex of the one known as Jesus. Question 17.18. Questioner, then if the entity Jesus was fourth density and there are wanderers on the planet today who came from fifth and sixth density, what was it that Jesus did that enabled him to be such a good healer, and could these fifth and sixth density beings here now do the same? Answer, I am Ra. Those who heal may be of any density which is the consciousness of the spirit. This includes third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. The third density can be one in which healing takes place just as the others. However, there is more illusory material to understand, to balance, to accept, and to move forward from. The gate to intelligent infinity can only be opened when an understanding of the instreamings of intelligent energy are opened unto the healer. These are the so-called natural laws of your local space-time continuum and its web of electromagnetic sources or nexi of instreaming energy. Know then, first, the mind and the body. Then as the spirit is integrated and synthesized, these are harmonized into a mind-body-spirit complex which can move among the dimensions and can open the gateway to intelligent infinity, thus healing self by light and sharing that light with others. True healing is simply the radiance of the self causing an environment in which a catalyst may occur which initiates the recognition of self, by self, of the self-healing properties of the self. Question 17.19. Questioner, how did Jesus learn this during his incarnation? Answer, I am Ra. This entity learned the ability by a natural kind of remembering at a very young age. Unfortunately, this entity first discovered his ability to penetrate intelligent infinity by becoming the distortion you call angry at a playmate. This entity was touched by the entity known as Jesus and was fatally wounded. Thus the one known as Jesus became aware that there dwelt in him a terrible potential. This entity determined to discover how to use this energy for the good, not for the negative. This entity was extremely positively polarized and remembered more than most wanderers do. Question 17.20. Questioner, how did this aggressive action against a playmate affect Jesus in his spiritual growth? Where did he go after his physical death? Answer, I am Ra. The entity you call Jesus was galvanized by this experience and began a lifetime of seeking and searching. This entity studied first day and night in its own religious constructs which you call Judaism and was learned enough to be a rabbi, as you call teach learners of this particular rhythm or distortion of understanding, at a very young age. At the age of approximately 13½ of your years, this entity left the dwelling place of its earthly family, as you would call it, and walked into many other places seeking further information. This went on sporadically until the entity was approximately 25, at which time it returned to its family dwelling and learned and practiced the art of its earthly father. When the entity had become able to integrate or synthesize all experiences, the entity began to speak to other selves and learn what it had felt during the preceding years to be of a worthwhile nature. The entity was absolved karmically of the destruction of another self when it was in the last portion of lifetime and spoke upon what you would call a cross, saying, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of action, or what you call karma. Question 17.21. Questioner, what density is the entity known as Jesus in now? Answer, I am Ra. This information is harmless though unimportant. This entity studies now the lessons of the wisdom vibration, the fifth density, also called the light vibration. Question 17.22. Questioner, in our culture there is a saying that he will return. Can you tell me if this is planned? Answer, I am Ra. I will attempt to sort out this question. It is difficult. This entity became aware that it was not an entity of itself but operated as a messenger of the one creator whom this entity saw as love. This entity was aware that this cycle was in its last portion and spoke to the effect that those of its consciousness would return at the harvest. The particular mind, body, spirit complex you call Jesus is, as what you would call an entity, not to return except as a member of the Confederation speaking through a channel. However, there are others of the identical congruency of consciousness that will welcome those to the fourth density. This is the meaning of the returning. Question 17.23. Questioner, can you tell me why you say that the Earth will be fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative, since there seems to be the much negativity here now? Answer, I am Ra. The Earth seems to be negative. That is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences which are of your time-space present. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation towards service to self has become that of harvestable quality. Question 17.24. Questioner, in other words, there will be fewer negative entities than positive entities harvested into the fourth density. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. The great majority of your peoples will repeat third density. Question 17.25. Questioner, how did Taras Bulba, Genghis Khan, and Rasputin get harvested prior to the harvest? Answer, I am Ra. It is the right privileged duty of those opening consciously the gate to intelligent infinity to choose the manner of their leaving of third density. Those of negative orientation who so achieve this right duty most often choose to move forward in their learned teaching of service to self. Question 17.26. Questioner, is this the reason for what we call spontaneous combustion of human beings? Answer, I am Ra. This is not correct. Question 17.27. Questioner, can you tell me what causes that phenomenon? Answer, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, a forest. One tree is struck by lightning. It burns. Lightning does not strike elsewhere. Elsewhere does not burn. There are random occurrences which do not have to do with the entity, but with the window phenomenon of which we spoke. Question 17.28. Questioner, are these entities uniquely the same, or are they random entities? Answer, I am Ra. The latter is correct. Question 17.29. Questioner, am I to understand that the harvest is to occur in the year 2011, or will it be spread out? Answer, I am Ra. This is an approximation. We have stated we have difficulty with your time-space. This is an appropriate probable possible time-space nexus for harvest. Those who are not in incarnation at this time will be included in the harvest. Question 17.30. Questioner, if an entity wants to be of service to others rather than service to self while he is in this third density, are there best ways of being of service to others, or is any way just as good as any other way? Answer, I am Ra. The best way to be of service to others has been explicitly covered in previous material. We will iterate briefly. The best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. This involves, shall we say, radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind, body, spirit complex. Speaking to the intention of your question, the best way for each seeker in third density to be of service to others is unique to that mind, body, spirit complex. This means that the mind, body, spirit complex must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it may best serve other selves. This will be different for each. There is no best. There is no generalization. Nothing is known. Question 17.31. Questioner, I don't wish to take up extra time asking questions over again. Some areas I consider important enough in relation to the law of one to ask questions in a different way in order to get another perspective in the answer. In the book OWASP it states that if an entity goes over 51% service to others and is less than 50% service to self, then that entity is harvestable. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct if the harvesting is to be for the positive fourth dimensional level. Question 17.32. Questioner, what is to be the entity's percentage if he is to be harvested for the negative? Answer, I am Ra. The entity who wishes to pursue the path of service to self must attain a grade of 5, that is 5% service to others, 95% service to self. It must approach totality. The negative path is quite difficult to attain harvestability upon and requires great dedication. Question 17.33. Questioner, why is the negative path so much more difficult to attain harvestability upon than the positive? Answer, I am Ra. This is due to a distortion of the law of one which indicates that the gateway to intelligent infinity be a gateway at the end of a straight and narrow path, as you may call it. To attain 51% dedication to the welfare of other selves is as difficult as attaining a grade of 5% dedication to other selves. The, shall we say, sinkhole of indifference is between those two. Question 17.34. Questioner, then if an entity is harvested into the fourth density with a grade of 51% for others and 49% for self, what level of the fourth density would he go into? I am assuming that there are different levels of the fourth density. Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Each enters that subdensity which vibrates in accordance with the entity's understanding. Question 17.35. Questioner, how many levels do we have here in the third density at this time? Answer, I am Ra. The third density has an infinite number of levels. Question 17.36. Questioner, I've heard that there are 7 astral and 7 Dhyanic levels. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. You speak of some of the more large distinctions in levels in your inner planes. That is correct. Question 17.37. Questioner, who inhabits the astral and Dhyanic planes? Answer, I am Ra. Entities inhabit the various planes due to their vibration nature. The astral plane varies from thought forms in the lower extremities to enlightened beings who become dedicated to teach learning in the higher astral planes. In the Dhyanic planes, as you call them, are those whose vibrations are even more close to the primal distortions of love light. Beyond these planes there are others. Question 17.38. Questioner, are there 7 subplanes to what we call our physical plane here? Answer, I am Ra. You are correct. This is difficult to understand. They are an infinite number of planes. In your particular space-time continuum distortion there are 7 subplanes of mind, body, spirit complexes. You will discover the vibrational nature of these 7 planes as you pass through your experiential distortions, meeting other selves of the various levels which correspond to the energy influx centers of the physical vehicle. The invisible, or inner, third density planes are inhabited by those who are not of body complex nature such as yours, that is, they do not collect about their spirit-mind complexes a chemical body. Nevertheless, these entities are divided in what you may call an artificial dream within a dream into various levels. In the upper levels, desire to communicate knowledge back down to the outer planes of existence becomes less, due to the intensive learned teaching which occurs upon these levels. Question 17.39. Questioner, is it necessary to penetrate one level at a time as we move through these planes? Answer, I am Ra. It has been our experience that some penetrate several planes at one time. Others penetrate them slowly. Some in eagerness attempt to penetrate the higher planes before penetrating the energies of the so-called more fundamental planes. This causes energy imbalance. You will find ill health, as you call this distortion, to frequently be the result of a subtle mismatch of energies in which some of the higher energy levels are being activated by the conscious attempts of the entity, while the entity has not penetrated the lower energy centers or subdensities of this density. Question 17.40. Questioner, is there a best way to meditate? Answer, I am Ra. No. Question 17.41. Questioner, at this time, near the end of the cycle, how are reincarnations into the physical allocated, shall we say, on this planet? Answer, I am Ra. Entities wishing to obtain critically needed experience in order to become harvestable are incarnated with priority over those who will, without too much probable possible doubt, need to re-experience this density. Question 17.42. Questioner, how long has this type of allocation been going on? Answer, I am Ra. This has been going on since the first individual entity became conscious of its need to learn the lessons of this density. This was the beginning of what you may call a seniority by vibration. Question 17.43. Questioner, can you explain what you mean by a seniority by vibration? Answer, I am Ra. This will be the final question of this session of working. The seniority by vibration is the preferential treatment, shall we say, which follows the ways of the law of one, which encourages harvestable individuals, each individual becoming aware of the time of harvest and the need on a self-level to bend mind, body, spirit towards the learned teaching of these lessons, by giving them priority in order that an entity may have the best possible chance, shall we say, in succeeding in this attempt. May we ask at this time if there are any brief questions? Question 17.44. Questioner, my only question is, what can we do to make the instrument more comfortable? Answer, I am Ra. This instrument is not wearing the appropriate apparel for this work. As inpourings occur in the regions of the, what you may call, seventh chakra, as you speak of these energy centers, filtering through the sixth and so forth, the entity's other or base chakras become somewhat de-energized. Thus, this entity should be more careful in its selection of warm apparel for the part of the body complex you call the feet. May we answer any other brief questions? Question 17.45. Questioner, then we want to put heavier clothing on the feet. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. I will leave this instrument now. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 18.1. Questioner, I was thinking last night that if I were in the place of Ra right now, the first distortion of the law of one might cause me to mix some erroneous data with the true information that I was transmitting to this group. Do you do this? Answer, I am Ra. We do not intentionally do this. However, there will be confusion. The errors which have occurred due to the occasional variation in the vibrational complex of this instrument due to its ingestion of a chemical substance. It is not our intent in this particular project to create erroneous information, but to express in the confining ambience of your language system the feeling of the infinite mystery of the one creation in its infinite and intelligent unity. Question 18.2. Questioner, can you tell me what the chemical substance is that, when ingested, causes poor contact? Answer, I am Ra. This is not a clear query. Could you please restate? Question 18.3. Questioner, you just stated that you had some problems with the instrument because of the ingestion of some chemical substance by the instrument. Can you tell me what the chemical substance was? Answer, I am Ra. The substance of which we speak is called vibration sound complex, LSD. It does not give poor contact if it is used in conjunction with the contact. The difficulty of this particular substance is that there is, shall we say, a very dramatic drop-off of the effect of this substance. In each case this instrument began the session with the distortion towards extreme vital energy which this substance produces. However, this entity was, during the session, at the point where this substance no longer was in sufficient strength to amplify the entity's abilities to express vital energy. Thus, first the phenomenon of, shall we say, a spotty contact, and then, as the instrument relies again upon its own vibrational complexes of vital energy, the vital energy in this case being very low, it became necessary to abruptly cut off communication in order to preserve and nurture the instrument. This particular chemical substance is both helpful and unhelpful in these contacts for the causes given. Question 18.4. Questioner: are there any foods that are helpful or harmful that the instrument might eat? Answer: I am Ra. This instrument has body complex distortion towards ill health in the distortion direction corrected best by ingestion of the foodstuffs of your grains and your vegetables, as you call them. However, this is extremely unimportant when regarded as an aid with equality to other aids such as attitude, which this instrument has in abundance. It, however, aids the vital energies of this instrument, with less distortion towards ill health, to ingest foodstuffs in the above manner with the occasional ingestion of what you call your meats, due to the instrument's need to lessen the distortion towards low vital energy. Question 18.5. Questioner: thank you. I have a question here that I will read. Much of the mystic tradition of seeking on earth holds the belief that the individual self must be erased or obliterated and the material world ignored for the individual to reach nirvana, as it is called, or enlightenment. What is the proper role of the individual self and its worldly activities to aid an individual to grow more into the law of one? Answer: I am Ra. The proper role of the entity is in this density to experience all things desired, to then analyze, understand, and accept these experiences, distilling from them the love light within them. Nothing shall be overcome. That which is not needed falls away. The orientation develops due to analysis of desire. These desires become more and more distorted towards conscious application of love light as the entity furnishes itself with distilled experience. We have found it to be inappropriate in the extreme to encourage the overcoming of any desires, except to suggest the imagination rather than the carrying out in the physical plane, as you call it, of those desires not consonant with the law of one, thus preserving the primal distortion of free will. The reason it is unwise to overcome is that overcoming is an unbalanced action creating difficulties in balancing in the time-space continuum. Overcoming, thus, creates the further environment for holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. All things are acceptable in the proper time for each entity, and in experiencing, in understanding, in accepting, in then sharing with other selves, the appropriate distortion shall be moving away from distortions of one kind to distortions of another which may be more consonant with the law of one. It is, shall we say, a shortcut to simply ignore or overcome any desire. It must instead be understood and accepted. This takes patience and experience which can be analyzed with care, with compassion for self and for other self. Question 18.6. Questioner: basically I would say that to infringe upon the free will of another entity would be the basic thing never to do under the law of one. Can you state any other breaking of the law of one than this basic rule? Answer: I am Ra. As one proceeds from the primal distortion of free will, one proceeds to the understanding of the focal points of intelligent energy which have created the intelligences or the ways of a particular mind, body, spirit complex in its environment, both what you would call natural and what you would call man-made. Thus, the distortions to be avoided are those which do not take into consideration the distortions of the focus of energy of love light, or shall we say, the logos of this particular sphere or density. These include the lack of understanding of the needs of the natural environment, the needs of other selves, mind, body, spirit complexes. These are many due to the various distortions of man-made complexes in which the intelligence and awareness of entities themselves have chosen a way of using the energies available. Thus, what would be an improper distortion with one entity is proper with another. We can suggest an attempt to become aware of the other self as self and thus do that action which is needed by other self, understanding from the other self's intelligence and awareness. In many cases this does not involve the breaking of the distortion of free will into a distortion or fragmentation called infringement. However, it is a delicate matter to be of service, and compassion, sensitivity, and an ability to empathize are helpful in avoiding the distortions of man-made intelligence and awareness. The area or arena called the societal complex is an arena in which there are no particular needs for care, for it is the prerogative or duty of those in the particular planetary sphere to act according to their free will for the attempted aid of the social complex. Thus, you have two simple directives: awareness of the intelligent energy expressed in nature, awareness of the intelligent energy expressed in self to be shared when it seems appropriate by the entity with the social complex, and you have one infinitely subtle and various set of distortions of which you may be aware, that is, distortions with respect to self and other selves, not concerning free will but concerning harmonious relationships and service to others as other selves would most benefit. Question 18.7. Questioner: as an entity in this density grows from childhood, he becomes more aware of his responsibilities. Is there an age below which an entity is not responsible for his actions, or is he responsible from the time of his birth? Answer: I am Ra. An entity incarnating upon the earth plane becomes conscious of self at a varying point in its time-space progress through the continuum. This may have a median, shall we say, of approximately 15 of your months. Some entities become conscious of self at a period closer to incarnation, some at a period farther from this event. In all cases, responsibility becomes retroactive from that point backward in the continuum, so that distortions are to be understood by the entity and dissolved as the entity learns. Question 18.8. Questioner: then an entity 4 years old would be totally responsible for any actions that were against or inharmonious with the law of one. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. It may be noted that it has been arranged by your social complex structures that the newer entities to incarnation are to be provided with guides of a physical mind, body, spirit complex, thus being able to learn quickly what is consonant with the law of one. Question 18.9. Questioner: who are these guides? Answer: I am Ra. These guides are what you call parents, teachers, and friends. Question 18.10. Questioner: the entity Aleister Crowley wrote, "Do what thou wilt" is the whole of the law. He was obviously of some understanding of the law of one. Where is this entity now? Answer: I am Ra. This entity is within your inner planes. This entity is in an healing process. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 19.1. Questioner, we are concerned in this communication with the evolution of mind, body and spirit. It seems to me that a good place to start would be the transition from the second to the third density, then to investigate in detail the evolution of third density entities of Earth, paying particular attention to the mechanisms which help or hinder that evolution. Do all entities make a transition from second to third density, or are there some entities who have never gone through this transition? Answer, I am Ra. Your question presumes the space-time continuum understandings of the intelligent energy which animates your illusion. Within the context of this illusion we may say that there are some that do not transfer from one particular density to another, for the continuum is finite. In the understanding which we have of the universe or creation as one infinite being, its heart beating as alive in its own intelligent energy, it merely is one beat of the heart of this intelligence from creation to creation. In this context each and every entity of consciousness has his will experiencing each and every density. Question 19.2. Questioner, let's take the point at which an individualized entity of second density is ready for transition to third. Is this second density being what we would call animal? Answer, I am Ra. There are three types of second density entities which become, shall we say, unspirited. The first is the animal. This is the most predominant. The second is the vegetable, most especially that which you call sound vibration complex, tree. These entities are capable of giving and receiving enough love to become individualized. The third is mineral. Occasionally a certain location place, as you may call it, becomes energized to individuality through the love it receives and gives in relationship to a third density entity which is in relationship to it. This is the least common transition. Question 19.3. Questioner, when this transition from second to third density takes place, how does the entity, whether it be animal, vegetable, tree, or mineral, become unspirited? Answer, I am Ra. Entities do not become unspirited. They become aware of the intelligent energy within each portion, cell, or atom, as you may call it, of its beingness. This awareness is that which is awareness of that already given. From the infinite come all densities. The self-awareness comes from within given the catalyst of certain experiences understanding, as we may call this particular energy, the upward spiraling of the cell or atom or consciousness. You may then see that there is an inevitable pull toward the, what you may call, eventual realization of self. Question 19.4. Questioner, then after the transition into the third density, am I correct in assuming, we'll take Earth as an example, the entities would then look like us? They would be in human form. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct, taking your planetary sphere as an example. Question 19.5. Questioner, when the first second density entities became third density on this planet, was this with the help of the transfer of beings from Mars, or were there second density beings who transferred into third density with no outside influence? Answer, I am Ra. There were some second density entities which made the graduation into third density with no outside stimulus but only the efficient use of experience. Others of your planetary second density joined the third density cycle due to harvesting efforts by the same sort of sending of vibratory aid as those of the Confederation send you now. This communication was, however, telepathic rather than telepathic vocal or telepathic written due to the nature of second density beings. Question 19.6. Questioner, who sent the aid to the second density beings? Answer, I am Ra. We call ourselves the Confederation of Planets in the service of the infinite Creator. This is a simplification in order to ease the difficulty of understanding among your people. We hesitate to use the term, sound vibration, understanding, but it is closest to our meaning. Question 19.7. Questioner, then did this second density to third density transition take place 75,000 years ago? Approximately. Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 19.8. Questioner, where did the second density beings get physical vehicles of third density type to incarnate into? Answer, I am Ra. There were among those upon this second density plane those forms which when exposed to third density vibrations became the third density, as you would call the sound vibration, human entities. That is, there was loss of body hair, as you would call it, the clothing of the body to protect it, the changing of the structure of the neck, jaw, and forehead in order to allow the easier vocalization, and the larger cranial development characteristic of third density needs. This was a normal transfiguration. Question 19.9. Questioner, over how long a period of time was this transfiguration? It must have been very short. Answer, I am Ra. The assumption is correct, in our terms at least, within a generation and 1/2, as you know these things. Those who had been harvested of this planet were able to use the newly created physical complex of chemical elements suitable for third density lessons. Question 19.10. Questioner, can you tell me how this newly created physical complex was suited to third density lessons and what those lessons were? Answer, I am Ra. There is one necessity for third density. That necessity is self-awareness, or self-consciousness. In order to be capable of such, this chemical complex of body must be capable of abstract thought. Thus, the fundamental necessity is the combination of rational and intuitive thinking. This was transitory in the second density forms operating largely upon intuition which proved through practice to yield results. The third density mind was capable of processing information in such a way as to think abstractly and in what could be termed useless ways, in the sense of survival. This is the primary requisite. There are other important ingredients: the necessity for a weaker physical vehicle to encourage the use of the mind, the development of the already present awareness of the social complex. These also being necessary, the further development of physical dexterity in the sense of the hand, as you call this portion of your body complex. Question 19.11. Questioner, this seems to be a carefully planned or engineered stage of development. Can you tell me anything of the origin of this plan or its development? Answer, I am Ra. We go back to previous information. Consider and remember the discussion of the logos. With the primal distortion of free will, each galaxy developed its own logos. This logos has complete free will in determining the paths of intelligent energy which promote the lessons of each of the densities given the conditions of the planetary spheres and the sun bodies. Question 19.12. Questioner, I will make a statement then of my understanding and ask you if I am correct. There is a, what I would call, physical catalyst operating at all times upon the entities in third density. I assume this operates approximately the same way in second density. It is a catalyst which acts through what we call pain and emotion. Is the primary reason for the weakening of the physical body and the elimination of body hair, etc., so that this catalyst would act more strongly upon the mind and therefore create the evolutionary process? Answer, I am Ra. This is not entirely correct, although closely associated with the distortions of our understanding. Consider, if you will, the tree for instance. It is self-sufficient. Consider, if you will, the third density entity. It is self-sufficient only through difficulty and deprivation. It is difficult to learn alone, for there is a built-in handicap, at once the great virtue and the great handicap of third density. That is the rational intuitive mind. Thus, the weakening of the physical vehicle, as you call it, was designed to distort entities towards a predisposition to deal with each other. Thus, the lessons which approach a knowing of love can be begun. This catalyst then is shared between peoples as an important part of each self's development, as well as the experiences of the self in solitude and the synthesis of all experience through meditation. The quickest way to learn is to deal with other selves. This is a much greater catalyst than dealing with the self. Dealing with the self without other selves is akin to living without what you would call mirrors. Thus, the self cannot see the fruits of its beingness. Thus, each may aid each by reflection. This is also a primary reason for the weakening of the physical vehicle, as you call the physical complex. Question 19.13. Questioner, then we have second density beings who have primarily motivation towards self and possibly a little motivation towards service to others with respect to their immediate family, going into third density and carrying this bias with them, but being in a position now where this bias will slowly be modified to one which is aimed toward a social complex and ultimately towards union with the all. Am I correct? Answer, I am Ra. You are correct. Question 19.14. Questioner, then the newest third density beings who have just made the transition from second are still strongly biased towards self-service. There must be many other mechanisms to create an awareness of the possibility of service to others. I am wondering, first about the mechanism, and I am wondering when the split takes place where the entity is able to continue on the road to service to self that will eventually take him on to fourth density. I'm assuming that an entity can start, say, in second density with service to self and continue right on through and just stay on what we would call the path of service to self and never be pulled over. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The second density concept of serving self includes the serving of those associated with tribe or pack. This is not seen in second density as separation of self and other self. All is seen as self, since in some forms of second density entities, if the tribe or pack becomes weakened, so does the entity within the tribe or pack. The new or initial third density has this innocent, shall we say, bias or distortion towards viewing those in the family, the society, as you would call, perhaps, country, as self. Thus, though a distortion not helpful for progress in third density, it is without polarity. The break becomes apparent when the entity perceives other selves as other selves and consciously determines to manipulate other selves for the benefit of the self. This is the beginning of the road of which you speak. Question 19.15. Questioner, then, through free will, sometime within the third density experience, the path splits and the entity consciously chooses, or he probably doesn't consciously choose. Does the entity consciously choose this path of the initial splitting point? Answer, I am Ra. We speak in generalities, which is dangerous for always inaccurate. However, we realize you look for the overview, so we will eliminate anomalies and speak of majorities. The majority of third density beings is far along the chosen path before realization of that path is conscious. Question 19.16. Questioner, can you tell me what bias creates the momentum towards the chosen path of service to self? Answer, I am Ra. We can speak only in metaphor. Some love the light. Some love the darkness. It is a matter of the unique and infinitely various creator choosing and playing among its experiences as a child upon a picnic. Some enjoy the picnic and find the sun beautiful, the food delicious, the games refreshing, and glow with the joy of creation. Some find the night delicious, their picnic being pain, difficulty, sufferings of others, and the examination of the perversities of nature. These enjoy a different picnic. All these experiences are available. It is the free will of each entity which chooses the form of play, the form of pleasure. Question 19.17. Questioner, I assume that an entity on either path can decide to change paths at any time and possibly retrace steps, the path changing being more difficult the farther along the path the change is made. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The further an entity has, what you would call, polarized, the more easily this entity may change polarity, for the more power and awareness the entity will have. Those truly helpless are those who have not consciously chosen but who repeat patterns without knowledge of the repetition or the meaning of the pattern. Question 19.18. Questioner, I believe we have a very important point here. It then seems that there is an extreme potential in this polarization, the same as there is in electricity. We have a positive and negative pole. The more you build the charge on either of these, the more the potential difference and the greater the ability to do work, as we call it in the physical. This would seem to me to be the same analogy that we have in consciousness. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is precisely correct. Question 19.19. Questioner, then it would seem that there is a relationship between what we perceive as a physical phenomenon, say the electrical phenomenon, and the phenomenon of consciousness, in that they, having stemmed from the one creator, are practically identical but have different actions. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. Again, we oversimplify to answer your query. The physical complex alone is created of many energy or electromagnetic fields interacting due to intelligent energy, the mental configurations or distortions of each complex further adding fields of electromagnetic energy and distorting the physical complex patterns of energy, the spiritual aspect serving as a further complexity of fields which is of itself perfect but which can be realized in many distorted and unintegrated ways by the mind and body complexes of energy fields. Thus, instead of one, shall we say, magnet with one polarity, you have in the body-mind-spirit complex one basic polarity expressed in what you would call vibratory energy, the sum of the energy fields, but which is affected by thought of all kinds generated by the mind complex, by distortions of the body complex, and by the numerous relationships between the microcosm, which is the entity, and the macrocosm in many forms which you may represent by viewing the stars, as you call them, each with a contributing energy ray which enters the electromagnetic web of the entity due to its individual distortions. Question 19.20. Questioner: is this then the root of what we call astrology? Answer: I am Ra. This will be the last full question of this session. The root of astrology, as you speak it, is one way of perceiving the primal distortions which may be predicted along probability-possibility lines given, shall we say, cosmic orientations and configurations at the time of the entrance into the physical-mental complex of the spirit and at the time of the physical-mental-spiritual complex into the illusion. This then has the possibility of suggesting basic areas of distortion. There is no more than this. The part astrology plays is likened unto that of one root among many. Question 19.21. Questioner: I just have two little questions here at the end. The instrument wanted to ask if there were any other substances, foods, etc. that she should not eat or drink, or things that she should not do because she does not wish to have poor contact for any reason. Answer: I am Ra. There is no activity which this instrument engages in which affects abilities negatively. There is one activity which affects its abilities positively. This is the sexual activity, as you would call it. There are substances ingested which do not aid the individual in the service it has chosen, this being that which you would call the marijuana. This is due to the distortion towards chemical lapses within the mind complex causing lack of synaptic continuity. This is a chemical reaction of short duration. This instrument, however, has not used this particular substance at any time while performing this service. We believe we have covered the use of such chemical agents as LSD, this being positive to a certain extent due to the energizing or speeding up of the vital forces. However, it is not recommended for this instrument due to the toll it takes upon the vital energies once the substance wears off. This being true of any speeding up chemical. Question 19.22. Questioner: is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable? Answer: I am Ra. This instrument is well aligned. You are being very conscientious. We request you take more care in being assured that this instrument is wearing footwear of what you would call vibratory sound complex, shoes. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. I communicate now. Question 20.1. Questioner: to go back a bit, what happened to the second density entities who were unharvestable when the third density began? I assume that there were some that did not make it into third density. Answer: I am Ra. The second density is able to repeat during third density a portion of its cycle. Question 20.2. Questioner: then the second density entities who did not get harvested at the beginning of this 75,000-year period, some are still on this planet. Were any of these second density entities harvested into the third density within the past 75,000 years? Answer: I am Ra. This has been increasingly true. Question 20.3. Questioner: so more and more second density entities are making it into third density. Can you give me an example of a second density entity coming into the third density in the recent past? Answer: I am Ra. Perhaps the most common occurrence of second density graduation during third density cycle is the so-called PET. For the animal which is exposed to the individualizing influences of the bond between animal and third density entity, this individuation causes a sharp rise in the potential of the second density entity, so that upon the cessation of physical complex the mind-body complex does not return into the undifferentiated consciousness of that species, if you will. Question 20.4. Questioner: then can you give me an example of an entity in third density that was just previously a second density entity? What type of entity do they become here? Answer: I am Ra. As a second density entity returns as third density for the beginning of this process of learning, the entity is equipped with the lowest, if you will so call these vibrational distortions, forms of third density consciousness, that is, equipped with self-consciousness. Question 20.5. Questioner: this would be a human in our form then who would be beginning the understandings of third density. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.6. Questioner: speaking of the rapid change that occurred in the physical vehicle from second to third density, this occurred, you said, in approximately a generation and a half. Body hair was lost and there were structural changes. I am aware of the physics of Dewey, Larson, who states that all is motion or vibration. Am I correct in assuming that the basic vibration that makes up the physical world changes, thus creating a different set of parameters, shall I say, in this short period of time between density changes, allowing for the new type of being? Am I correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.7. Questioner: is the physics of Dewey correct? Answer: I am Ra. The physics of sound vibrational complex, Dewey, is a correct system as far as it is able to go. There are those things which are not included in this system. However, those coming after this particular entity, using the basic concepts of vibration and the study of vibrational distortions, will begin to understand that which you know as gravity and those things you consider as n-dimensions. These things are necessary to be included in a more universal, shall we say, physical theory. Question 20.8. Questioner: did this entity, Dewey, then bring this material through for use primarily in the fourth density? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.9. Questioner: yesterday we were talking about the split that occurs when an entity either consciously or unconsciously chooses the path that leads to either service to others or service to self. The philosophical question of why such a split even exists came up. It was my impression that just as it is in electricity, if we have no polarity in electricity we have no electricity, we have no action. Therefore, I am assuming that it is the same in consciousness. If we have no polarity in consciousness we also have no action or experience. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. You may use the general term work. Question 20.10. Questioner: then the concept of service to self and service to others is mandatory if we wish to have work, whether it be work in consciousness or work of a mechanical nature in the Newtonian concept in the physical. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct with one addendum. The coil, as you may understand this term, is wound, is potential, is ready. The thing that is missing without polarizing is the charge. Question 20.11. Questioner: then the charge is provided by individualized consciousness. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. The charge is provided by the individualized entity using the inpourings and instreamings of energy by the choices of free will. Question 20.12. Questioner: thank you. As soon as the third density started 75,000 years ago and we have incarnate third density entities, What was the average human lifespan at that time? Answer, I am Ra. At the beginning of this particular portion of your space-time continuum, the average lifespan was approximately 900 of your years. Question 20.13. Questioner, did the average lifespan grow longer or shorter as we progressed into third density experience? Answer, I am Ra. There is a particular use for the span of life in this density, and given the harmonious development of the learning teachings of this density, the lifespan of the physical complex would remain the same throughout the cycle. However, your particular planetary sphere developed vibrations by the second major cycle which shortened the lifespan dramatically. Question 20.14. Questioner, assuming a major cycle is 25,000 years, at the end of the first major cycle, what was the lifespan? Answer, I am Ra. The lifespan at the end of the first cycle, which you call major, was approximately 700 of your years. Question 20.15. Questioner, then in 25,000 years we lost 200 years of lifespan. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.16. Questioner, can you tell me the reason for this shortening of lifespan? Answer, I am Ra. The causes of this shortening are always an euphonious or inharmonious relational vibration between other selves. In the first cycle this was not severe due to the dispersion of peoples, but there was a growing feeling complex distortion towards separateness from other selves. Question 20.17. Questioner, I am assuming that at the start of one of these cycles there could have been either a positive polarization that would generally occur over the 25,000 years or a negative polarization. Is the reason for the negative polarization and the shortening of the lifespan the influx of entities from Mars who had already polarized somewhat negatively? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect. There was not a strong negative polarization due to this influx. The lessening of the lifespan was due primarily to the lack of the building of positive orientation. When there is no progress, those conditions which grant progress are gradually lost. This is one of the difficulties of remaining unpolarized. The chances, shall we say, of progress become steadily less. Question 20.18. Questioner, the way I understand it, at the beginning of this 75,000-year cycle, then, we had a mixture of entities, those who had graduated from second density on Earth to become third density, and then a group of entities transferred from the planet Mars to continue third density here. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. You must remember that those transferred to this sphere were in the middle of their third density, so that this third density was an adaptation rather than a beginning. Question 20.19. Questioner, what percentage of the entities who were here in third density at that time were Martian, and what percentage were harvested from Earth's second density? Answer, I am Ra. There were perhaps 1/2 of the third density population being entities from the red planet, Mars, as you call it. Perhaps 1/4 from second density of your planetary sphere. Approximately 1/4 from other sources, other planetary spheres whose entities chose this planetary sphere for third density work. Question 20.20. Questioner, when they incarnated here, did all three of these types mix together in societies or groups, or were they separated by groups and society? Answer, I am Ra. They remained largely unmixed. Question 20.21. Questioner, then did this unmixing lend to a possibility of warlike energy between groups? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.22. Questioner, did this help to reduce the lifespan? Answer, I am Ra. This did reduce the lifespan, as you call it. Question 20.23. Questioner, can you tell me why 900 years is the optimum lifespan? Answer, I am Ra. The mind-body-spirit complex of third density has perhaps 100 times as intensive a program of catalytic action from which to distill distortions and learn teachings than any other of the densities. Thus the learned teachings are most confusing to the mind-body-spirit complex, which is, shall we say, inundated by the ocean of experience. During the first, shall we say, perhaps 150 to 200 of your years as you measure time, a mind, body, spirit complex is going through the process of a spiritual childhood. The mind and the body are not enough in a disciplined configuration to lend clarity to the spiritual influxes. Thus, the remaining time span is given to optimize the understandings which result from experience itself. Question 20.24. Questioner: Then at present it would seem that our current lifespan is much too short for those who are new to third density lessons. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Those entities which have, in some way, taught themselves the appropriate distortions for rapid growth can now work within the confines of the short lifespan. However, the greater preponderance of your entities find themselves in what may be considered a perpetual childhood. Question 20.25. Questioner: Back in the first 25,000-year period, or major cycle, what type of aid was given by the Confederation to the entities who were in this 25,000-year period so that they would have the opportunity to grow? Answer: I am Ra. The Confederation members which dwell in inner plane existence within the planetary complex of vibratory densities worked with these entities. There was also the aid of one of the Confederation which worked with those of Mars in making the transition. For the most part, the participation was limited, as it was appropriate to allow the full travel of the workings of the confusion mechanism to operate in order for the planetary entities to develop that which they wished in, shall we say, freedom within their own thinking. It is often the case that a third density planetary cycle will take place in such a way that there need be no outside, shall we say, or other self-aid in the form of information. Rather, the entities themselves are able to work themselves towards the appropriate polarizations and goals of third density learned teachings. Question 20.26. Questioner: I make the assumption that if maximum efficiency had been achieved in this 25,000-year period, the entities would have polarized either towards service to self or towards service to others, one or the other. This would have made them harvestable at the end of that 25,000-year period, in which case they would have had to move to another planet because this one would have been third density for 50,000 or more years. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. Let us untangle your assumption, which is complex and correct in part. The original desire is that entities seek and become one. If entities can do this in a moment, they may go forward in a moment, and, thus, were this to occur in a major cycle, indeed, the third density planet would be vacated at the end of that cycle. It is, however, more towards the median or mean, shall we say, of third density developments throughout the one infinite universe that there be a small harvest after the first cycle, the remainder having significantly polarized, the second cycle having a much larger harvest, the remainder being even more significantly polarized, the third cycle culminating the process and the harvest being completed. Question 20.27. Questioner: Was the Confederation watching to see and expecting to see a harvest at the end of the 25,000-year period in which a percentage would be harvestable fourth density positive and a percentage harvestable fourth density negative? Answer: I am Ra. That is correct. You may see our role in the first major cycle as that of the gardener who, knowing the season, is content to wait for the spring. When the springtime does not occur, the seeds do not sprout out, then it is that the gardener must work in the garden. Question 20.28. Questioner: Am I to understand, then, that there was neither a harvest of positive or negative entities at the end of that 25,000 years? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Those whom you call the Orion Group made one attempt to offer information to those of third density during that cycle. However, the information did not fall upon the ears of any who were concerned to follow this path to polarity. Question 20.29. Questioner: What technique did the Orion Group use to give this information? Answer: I am Ra. The technique used was of two kinds: 1. The thought transfer, or what you may call telepathy. 2. The arrangement of certain stones in order to suggest strong influences of power, this being those of statues and of rock formations in your Pacific areas, as you now call them, and to an extent in your Central American regions, as you now understand them. Question 20.30. Questioner, were you speaking in part of the stoneheads of Easter Island? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.31. Questioner, how would such stoneheads influence the people to take the path of service to self? Answer, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the entities living in such a way that their mind, body, spirit complexes are at what seems to be the mercy of forces which they cannot control. Given a charged entity such as a statue or a rock formation charged with nothing but power, it is possible for the free will of those viewing this particular structure or formation to ascribe to this power over those things which cannot be controlled. This, then, has the potential for the further distortion to power over others. Question 20.32. Questioner, how were these stoneheads constructed? Answer, I am Ra. These were constructed by thought after a scanning of the deep mind, the trunk of mind tree, looking at the images most likely to cause the experience of awe in the viewer. Question 20.33. Questioner, did the Orion entities do this themselves? Did they do this in the physical? Did they land, or did they do it from mental planes? Answer, I am Ra. Nearly all of these structures and formations were constructed at a distance by thought. A very few were created in later times in imitation of original constructs by entities upon your Earth plane density. Question 20.34. Questioner, what density Orion entity did the construction of these heads? Answer, I am Ra. The fourth density, the density of love or understanding, was the density of the particular entity which offered this possibility to those of your first major cycle. Question 20.35. Questioner, you use the same nomenclature for the fourth density negative as for the fourth density positive. Both are called the dimension of love or of understanding. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Love and understanding, whether it be of self or of self toward other self, is one. Question 20.36. Questioner, what was the approximate date in years past of the construction of these heads? Answer, I am Ra. This approximately was 60,000 of your years in the past time-space of your continent. Question 20.37. Questioner, what structures were built in South America? Answer, I am Ra. In this location were fashioned some characteristic statues, some formations of what you call rock and some formations involving rock and earth. Question 20.38. Questioner, were the lines at Nazca included in this? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.39. Questioner, since these can only be seen from an altitude, of what benefit were they? Answer, I am Ra. The formations were of benefit because charged with energy of power. Question 20.40. Questioner, I'm a little confused. These lines at Nazca are hardly understandable for an entity walking on the surface. He cannot see anything but disruption of the surface. However, if you go up to a high altitude you can see the patterns. How was it of benefit to the entities walking on the surface? Answer, I am Ra. At the remove of the amount of time-space which is now your present, it is difficult to perceive that at the time-space 60,000 years ago the Earth was formed in such a way as to be visibly arranged in powerful structural designs from the vantage point of distant hills. Question 20.41. Questioner, in other words, at that time there were hills overlooking these lines? Answer, I am Ra. This will be the last full question of this session. The entire smoothness, as you see this area now, was built up in many places in hills. The time-space continuum has proceeded with wind and weather, as you would say, to erode to a great extent both the somewhat formidable structures of Earth designed at that time and the nature of the surrounding countryside. Question 20.42. Questioner, I think I understand then that these lines are just the faint traces of what used to be there. Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 20.43. Questioner, thank you. We need to know whether or not it is possible to continue with another session today and whether there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable. Answer: I am Ra. It is possible. We ask that you observe carefully the alignment of the instrument. Otherwise, you are conscientious. Is there any short query before we close? Question 20.44. Questioner: I intend in the next session to focus upon the development of the positively oriented entities in the first 25,000 years. I know you can't make suggestions. Can you give me any comment on this at all? Answer: I am Ra. The choices are yours according to your discernment. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.